Don't touch my car!
No,
Marcus
wait,
Webb's
please
voice
don't
cracked
go.
like a
Stay
whip
and
across
fix it.
the
I'll pay
crowded
you
San
anything.
Francisco street. His finger jabbed toward the homeless black man approaching his smoking $4.5 million Titan Apex. I said step back. Security is on the way, and I swear to God, if you come 1 inch closer... The homeless man stopped. His hands rose slowly, palms forward. His voice came out steady, almost gentle. Sir, your quantum cooling system has a microfracture in the secondary loop. In exactly 47 minutes, your engine will suffer catastrophic failure. I can fix it. Marcus Webb, one of America's most celebrated black billionaires, stared at the man he was about to have arrested. He didn't know yet that this stranger held the key to everything he'd forgotten about himself. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments and subscribe to follow this incredible story to its end. You won't believe what happens next. The smoke rose in thick blue-gray spirals from beneath the hood of the Titan Apex, and Marcus Webb felt his entire world collapsing with each poisonous curl that drifted into the San Francisco morning air. He punched the number for Titan Motors' emergency line for the 4th time. The same automated message. The same hollow promise of a callback within 30 minutes. He had been standing here for 22 minutes already, and every second felt like a nail being driven into his reputation. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Investors arriving in 2 hours. Chen from Beijing confirmed. This is the big one, Marcus. He knew it was the big one. He had spent 3 years building toward this meeting. 3 years of sleepless nights of promises made to his board of swearing to his dying mother that he would prove them all wrong. And now his 4.5 million hypercar, the symbol of everything he had achieved, sat dying on a public street while strangers gathered to watch. Come on, come on, come on, Marcus muttered, dialing again. A woman in the crowd raised her phone. The red recording light blinked at him like an accusation. Marcus turned his back to her. His hand trembled slightly as he waited for anyone to answer. That's when he saw him. The man moved through the edge of the crowd with a kind of quiet purpose that made Marcus's stomach tighten. He was black tall, maybe early 60s, with a gray-streaked beard that hadn't seen a barber in months. His clothes were worn but clean, a faded army jacket over a flannel shirt that had been washed so many times it had lost its original color. He carried a reusable grocery bag that sagged with the weight of everything he owned. Homeless. The word flashed through Marcus's mind before he could stop it, followed immediately by another word threat. The man kept approaching. Sir, the homeless man said, his voice cutting through the crowd's murmur with startling clarity. Your quantum cooling system has a microfracture in the secondary loop. Marcus's finger found the security button on his phone without conscious thought. Step away from my vehicle. In approximately 47 minutes, you'll have catastrophic engine failure. The man's hands were raised now, palms out the universal gesture of harmlessness. I can fix it. I said step back. Marcus heard his own voice, hard and cold, the voice he used in boardrooms when someone challenged his authority. I don't know what you're trying to pull, but this car contains proprietary technology that you couldn't possibly understand. The homeless man didn't move. His eyes, Marcus noticed unwillingly, were sharp and clear. Not the glazed look of addiction or mental illness, something else entirely. The smoke is blue-gray because the nanocoolant is vaporizing against your thermal shielding, the man continued as if Marcus hadn't spoken. That specific color indicates contamination in the tertiary chamber. Your diagnostic system probably gave you a 45-minute warning. Am I wrong? Marcus's blood went cold. The diagnostic had said exactly 45 minutes. That information wasn't displayed anywhere external. There was no way this stranger could have known unless... Who are you? Marcus demanded. Did someone send you? Is this some kind of setup? My name is Raymond Carter. I helped design the cooling system your car is based on. The man's voice remained steady, almost professional. Patent number TT5729QX registered 6 years ago through Meridian Aerospace. Your Titan Apex uses a modified version of that architecture. The patent number hit Marcus like a physical blow. He knew that number. His engineering team had referenced it dozens of times during their own thermal regulation projects. The original inventor was listed as R. Carter, a name that had become almost legendary in certain circles. But R. Carter had disappeared years ago. There were rumors of scandal, of fraud, of a brilliant mind that had self-destructed. Nobody talked about what really happened. That's impossible, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its edge. R. Carter was a professor at MIT, a consultant to NASA. He's not... He couldn't finish the sentence. He couldn't say the words homeless or on the streets while looking into this man's face. A new voice cut through the tension. Marcus Webb, is that you? Marcus turned. A young woman with a press badge pushed through the crowd, her phone already recording. Jennifer Okafor, tech reporter for the Bay Area Chronicle. She had written 3 hit pieces on Marcus in the past year alone. Mr. Webb, can you comment on what's happening with your vehicle? Our readers would love to know how the famous Marcus Webb handles adversity. No comment, Marcus snapped. Is it true that Quantum Dynamics is struggling to meet production deadlines? Some sources say your investor meeting today could determine whether your company survives the quarter. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. I said no comment. Jennifer's eyes slid to Raymond, standing quietly nearby. And who is this? Are you hiring homeless consultants now, Mr. Webb? That would make quite a headline. Raymond said nothing. His expression remained calm, but Marcus caught something flickering in his eye. Recognition, no. Something deeper. Something like old pain meeting new humiliation. Get away from my car, Marcus growled at Jennifer. Both of you. His phone buzzed again. This time a call. He grabbed it desperately. Mr. Webb, this is Titan Motors Premium Service. We understand you're experiencing a vehicle issue. Finally. Yes, my Apex is overheating. The engine is smoking. I need someone here immediately. I understand, sir. Unfortunately, our nearest certified technician is 2 hours and 15 minutes away. The quantum thrust system requires specialized equipment that... 2 hours? I don't have 2 hours. Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience. If you'd like, I can arrange for a tow to our nearest service center. Towing will accelerate the damage, Raymond said quietly. Moving the vehicle while the coolant is compromised will cause the contamination to spread to the primary loop. You'll lose the entire engine. Marcus stared at him. How do you know what they're saying? I don't, but I know what they're going to suggest, and I know why it won't work. The Titan representative continued in Marcus's ear. Sir, are you still there? We can have a flatbed there in approximately 90 minutes. The bearings will be destroyed by then, Raymond said calmly. $870,000, 11 weeks to fabricate replacements. And that's if they can find a facility that still has the tooling. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. Every number Raymond cited was specific, precise, the kind of precision that came from intimate knowledge, not guesswork. I'll call you back, Marcus said and ended the call. Jennifer Okafor was still recording. The crowd had swelled to nearly 40 people. Someone had started a live stream. Marcus could see the comments scrolling on their screen, hundreds of strangers watching his humiliation in real time. You have my attention, Marcus said to Raymond, his voice low. You have 60 seconds to explain how you know what you know. Raymond nodded. 31 years ago, I graduated top of my class from MIT with 3 degrees in mechanical and aerospace engineering. 26 years ago, I became the youngest department head in Meridian Aerospace's history. 20 years ago, I developed the thermal regulation system that your car and half the spacecraft currently in orbit are based on. He paused. 4 years ago, I lost everything because I refused to sign off on a safety shortcut that I knew would kill people. The prototype failed anyway, exactly as I predicted, and they blame me for it. The Meridian disaster. Marcus breathed. He remembered now. It had been all over the news. A revolutionary aerospace prototype had exploded during testing, destroying a $200 million facility and nearly killing 3 technicians. The chief engineer had been blamed, publicly crucified in the media, and then... silence. I didn't know the engineer's name, Marcus admitted. The coverage always just said lead engineer or department head. Raymond Carter doesn't generate clicks, Raymond replied without bitterness. Disgraced engineer, fraudulent scientist, those generate clicks. The car's diagnostic system chimed. Warning, 41 minutes to critical system failure. Mr. Webb? A sharp voice cut through the crowd. 3 men in dark suits pushed through the gathering, led by a tall white man with a military haircut and cold eyes. We received your security alert. Is this man bothering you? Marcus recognized the lead man, James Hendricks, chief of security for the nearby Prometheus Tech campus. They had met at conferences, exchanged business cards, made the kind of hollow promises that powerful men make to each other. But something else nagged at Marcus's memory. Something about Hendricks and Meridian. A connection he couldn't quite place. Hendricks positioned himself between Marcus and Raymond, his hand resting near his hip. Sir, he addressed Raymond without looking at him, I'm going to need you to step away from Mr. Webb immediately. Raymond lowered his hand slowly. His expression didn't change. I was offering to help with his vehicle, Raymond said calmly. The engine is failing. I have the expertise to repair it. Hendricks' laugh was short and sharp. I'm sure you do. He glanced at his team. Run his ID, full background. One of the security guards approached Raymond, who produced a worn card from his jacket pocket without protest. A shelter ID. Marcus watched the guard examine it, watched his expression shift from professional neutrality to something darker. "No fixed address," the guard reported. "No employment records for the past 4 years. Previous employer listed as Meridian Aerospace, terminated for cause." He looked up at Hendricks. "There's a note here about an incident. Fraud investigation." Something flickered across Hendricks' face. Was it surprise or something else? "Fraud?" Hendricks repeated, and his voice had an odd quality to it, almost satisfied. "Well, that settles it. Mr. Webb, this man is clearly attempting some kind of con. We should remove him from the area immediately." "Wait," Marcus said. Something wasn't right. Hendricks had reacted to the name before the guard finished reading the file. He had known. But how, Mr. Webb, I really must insist. "I said wait." Marcus turned to Raymond. "The investigation. You said they cleared you. 18 months after they destroyed my career," Raymond confirmed. "Internal memo MRD 7749. It proved that management had overridden my safety protocols to meet an arbitrary deadline set by their investors. The prototype failed because they cut corners I had specifically warned against." Hendricks' expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Webb, the word of a homeless man against official corporate records is hardly—" "What did you say?" Raymond's voice cut through like a blade. He was staring at Hendricks now, his calm demeanor cracking for the first time. "What did you just say? I said your word against official records?" "No, you said management overrode safety protocols. I never said that. I said they overrode my protocols. I never specified which ones." The air between them seemed to crystallize. Marcus looked from Raymond to Hendricks, sensing something massive shifting beneath the surface of this confrontation. "I was on the Meridian board," Hendricks said flatly. "Before I moved into security consulting, the case was public record." "The memo wasn't." Raymond's voice had gone quiet. Dangerous. "Memo MRD 7749 was sealed as part of the settlement. The only people who knew what was in it were the board members who signed the non-disclosure agreement." His eyes narrowed. "And the engineer they threw to the wolves to cover their own negligence." Marcus felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. "Hendricks, were you involved in the Meridian decision?" "I don't have to answer that." "You just did." Marcus stepped back, reassessing the security chief with new eyes. "You were there. When they decided to blame him, you were part of it. Mr. Webb, this is ancient history, and it has nothing to do with your current situation. This man is a known fraud who is attempting to manipulate you. I recommend you stop talking." Marcus's voice had dropped to a register that made his employees nervous. The boardroom voice. The voice that had built a billion-dollar empire. "And I recommend you explain why you're so eager to remove the one person who might be able to help me." Hendricks' composure finally cracked. "Because he's a liability, because 4 years ago he almost destroyed one of the largest aerospace companies in the country, and now he's standing next to a vehicle worth more than most houses, claiming he can fix it with his bare hands. Does that sound credible to you?" "He knows the patent number," Marcus said quietly. "He knows the exact cost of replacement parts. He knows details about this vehicle that aren't public knowledge. Because he's a con artist. That's what con artists do. They research their marks. He knew about your memo." Marcus cut him off. "The sealed memo that only board members saw. How would a con artist research something that's under legal seal?" Hendricks opened his mouth, closed it. His face had gone pale. "Sir," one of his security guards said uncertainly, "should we still process the removal?" "Don't touch him." Marcus's command left no room for argument. "Nobody touches him until I say otherwise." Jennifer Okafor had stopped trying to get quotes. She was just recording now, her eyes wide, clearly aware that she had stumbled onto something much bigger than a celebrity car breakdown. The diagnostic chimed again. Warning 37 minutes to critical system failure. Raymond hadn't moved throughout the entire exchange, but when Marcus turned back to him, he saw something new in the older man's face. Not gratitude exactly, something more complicated. "You believe me," Raymond said. It wasn't a question. "I believe you know things you shouldn't know," Marcus replied. "I believe Hendricks is hiding something, and I believe my car is going to die in 37 minutes unless someone does something." He paused. "What I don't understand is why you're helping me." "Because your failure wouldn't just be your failure." Raymond's voice was steady, but there was weight behind the words. "It would be another headline about a black man who couldn't deliver. Another excuse for them to say we don't belong in these spaces. Marcus felt the words hit somewhere deep in his chest. He had thought the same thing 1,000 times over the years. Every time he walked into a room full of white investors. Every time a reporter questioned his credentials. Every time someone suggested he had only succeeded because of diversity initiatives rather than his own brilliance. He had fought that battle alone for so long. He had forgotten there were others fighting it too. "You could have walked away," Marcus said. "After how I treated you. You could have let me fail." "I could have," Raymond nodded. "But then what would that make me?" Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Victor Chen, the Beijing investor, calling to confirm. "I have to take this," Marcus said. "Don't let him leave. Don't let anyone touch him." He stepped away from the crowd, pressing the phone to his ear. "Mr. Chen, I apologize for—" "Marcus." Victor's voice was calm, but carried an edge that Marcus recognized. The edge of a man who was about to deliver bad news. "I've seen the live stream. Would you like to explain why you're standing on a street corner while your car smokes like a chimney?" Marcus closed his eyes. Of course Victor had seen it. Everyone had seen it. That was the world now, no privacy, no grace period, no chance to fix mistakes before they became public spectacles. "A minor technical issue," Marcus said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "It will be resolved before our meeting." "Will it? Because I'm watching you argue with a homeless man while your vehicle dies. That doesn't inspire confidence, Marcus." "Mr. Chen, I assure you, I'm also watching something else." Victor's voice shifted slightly. "I'm watching you stand up for that man when your security chief tried to have him removed. I'm watching you listen when everyone around you is telling you not to." Marcus blinked. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I've done business with men who would have had that homeless man arrested without a second thought. Men who care more about appearances than truth. Men who would never admit they might have made a mistake." Victor paused. "You are not one of those men. That's why I'm still on this call." "Mr. Chen?" "Fix your car, Marcus, however you have to do it. Then come to our meeting and show me the man I just watched stand up for a stranger. That's the man I want to invest in." The call ended. Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment, then turned back to the crowd. Raymond was exactly where he had left him, calm and patient, while Hendricks glared from a distance. The security guards had formed an uncertain perimeter, clearly unsure whose orders to follow. Marcus walked back to Raymond. "If I let you try to fix this car and you fail, my career is over. You understand that?" "Yes." "And if you succeed, I'm going to have a lot of questions for you. About Meridian, about Hendricks, about how a man with your credentials ended up sleeping in a shelter." "I expected as much." "Then tell me one more thing." Marcus met his gaze directly. "Why did you really come over here when you saw my car smoking? You could have kept walking. Most people would have." Raymond was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. 31 years ago, I was a student at MIT. Brilliant, they said. Destined for greatness. But I was also black and poor, and nobody in my family had ever set foot on a college campus." He paused. "I was standing outside the engineering building one day, too intimidated to go in, when a man stopped beside me. White guy, expensive suit, looked like he owned the place. I assumed he was going to tell me I didn't belong there." Marcus waited. Instead, he asked me what I was waiting for. I told him I wasn't sure I was smart enough to be there. He laughed and said, "Son, if you were smart enough to get in, you're smart enough to stay. The only question is whether you're brave enough to try." Raymond's eyes met Marcus's. That man was James Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Industries. Billionaire. And he spent 15 minutes talking to a scared kid he had never met for no reason other than he saw someone who needed help. What happened to him? He died 6 years later. Heart attack. I never got to thank him properly. Raymond gestured toward the smoking car. "But I made a promise to myself that day. If I ever had the chance to help someone the way he helped me, I would take it, no matter what they looked like, no matter how they treated me." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been hardened for so long he had forgotten it was there. "You could have told me this from the beginning," he said quietly. "Why didn't you?" "Because it shouldn't matter." Raymond's voice was firm. "I shouldn't need a heartwarming story to be treated like a human being. My knowledge should have been enough. My offer to help should have been enough." The diagnostic chimed. Warning 33 minutes to critical system failure. Marcus made his decision. "Someone get this man whatever he needs," he announced to the crowd. "Pencils, tools, whatever. We're going to fix this car." Hendricks stepped forward. "Mr. Webb, I cannot in good conscience allow—" "Then don't." Marcus cut him off. In fact, I think you should leave. And when this is over, we're going to have a very long conversation about Meridian Aerospace and what you knew about Raymond Carter's termination. Hendrix's face went white. You can't... I can. I'm Marcus Webb, and this is my car, and that man knows more about the technology inside it than anyone from your precious service center. He turned to the younger security guard. You, what's your name? Davis, sir. Marcus Davis. Marcus Davis, I like that. Go to the convenience store on the corner and get me Stedler Mars Lumograph pencils, 8B grade, multiple packs. Run. The guard took off without hesitation. Marcus turned back to Raymond. 29 minutes. Can you do it? Raymond allowed himself a small smile. I've done more with less in worse conditions. The question is whether you're ready to see something you can't explain. Try me. Raymond nodded and approached the smoking engine with the calm focus of a surgeon entering an operating room. His hands moved with practiced precision as he examined the components without touching them, his eyes cataloging damage and calculating solutions. I need the emergency kit from your trunk, he said, and something to work on. A flat surface. Marcus retrieved the carbon fiber case and set it on the car's hood. Raymond opened it efficiently, examining each item with the familiarity of someone who had designed the protocol himself. Better than I expected, he murmured. They improved the sealant compound. Good. That will make this easier. He pulled out his phone and handed it to Marcus. Hold this. Flashlight mode. I need to see the fracture point clearly. Marcus complied, positioning the light where Raymond indicated. Behind them, the crowd had fallen into an expectant hush. Even Jennifer Okafor had lowered her recording phone, watching with something like awe. Raymond's hands moved into the engine compartment, finding paths between delicate components with the ease of long practice. There, he said quietly, just where I thought. The fracture is exactly at the stress point I identified in my original design report. You predicted this failure? I predicted the vulnerability. The failure was inevitable once they ignored my warnings. Raymond's voice remained professional, but Marcus caught the undercurrent of old anger. Production deadline was more important than passenger safety. Story of my life. The guard returned slightly out of breath, clutching multiple packages of pencils. Got 'em. Is this right? Raymond examined the packages and nodded. Perfect. Thank you. He took one pencil and carefully extracted the graphite core, then began grinding it against a rough surface, creating a fine powder that he collected in a small container from the emergency kit. What are you doing? Marcus asked, fascinated despite himself. Creating a thermal bonding agent, Raymond explained. The graphite has a specific nanoparticle structure that will infuse with the emergency sealant and create a compound capable of withstanding the pressure and temperature inside the secondary cooling loop. That's not possible. The manufacturer said this repair requires specialized equipment and a controlled environment. The manufacturer wants you to believe that because it justifies their service fees. Raymond mixed the graphite powder with the sealant, his movements precise and confident. The fundamental physics are simple. It's the proprietary mystique that's complicated. Marcus watched in amazement as Raymond prepared his improvised compound, testing its consistency and adjusting the ratios with the intuition of someone who understood the materials at a molecular level. Your mother should... Marcus said suddenly. What would she think of all this? Raymond's hands paused for just a moment. My mother died believing I was a fraud. The stress of the accusations. Her heart couldn't take it. She passed 3 months before the investigation cleared me. I'm sorry. So am I. Raymond resumed his work. She spent her whole life telling me that education would set me free, that if I worked hard enough and got smart enough, nothing could stop me. His voice was quiet. She was wrong? But I couldn't tell her that. Not at the end. The diagnostic chimed. Warning 26 minutes to critical system failure. Almost ready, Raymond said. He positioned himself over the engine compartment, the improvised sealant in one hand. I need absolute concentration for this. One mistake and the compound won't bond properly. Marcus nodded. Everyone quiet. Give him space. The crowd fell silent. Even the traffic noise seemed to fade as Raymond reached into the heart of the quantum engine. His hands moved with surgical precision, applying the compound to the invisible fracture with the steady confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times in his mind. The smoke began to thin almost immediately. Venting the contaminated coolant, Raymond narrated quietly. Sealing the fracture. Now I need to restore pressure to the secondary loop without disturbing the fresh bond. Marcus held his breath. The entire crowd seemed to hold their breath. The diagnostic screen flickered. System stabilizing. A murmur ran through the watchers. Raymond continued working, making adjustments too subtle for Marcus to follow until finally he stepped back. Start the engine. Marcus hesitated. Everything he had worked for came down to this moment. If Raymond was wrong, if this was all an elaborate con, his reputation would never recover. But if Raymond was right? Marcus reached into the car and pressed the ignition. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the Titan Apex roared to life, its engine purring with the smooth power that had made it a legend. No smoke. No warning lights. Just pure perfect function. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone started clapping and the applause spread until even Hendrix's remaining guards were joining in reluctantly. Marcus stared at the diagnostic screen in disbelief. System stabilizing. Quantum thrust, cooling functional. Performance limited to 70% capacity. Service recommended. How? He began. Physics, Raymond said simply. And a few $1 million worth of education applied correctly. Marcus turned to face him. This homeless man who had just saved his car, his meeting, and possibly his entire company, with pencil graphite and steady hands. I have questions, Marcus said. A lot of questions. I expected as much. But first, Marcus extended his hand. Thank you. Raymond looked at the offered hand for a moment. Then he took it. You're welcome, Mr. Webb. Marcus? Call me Marcus. Raymond? They shook hands in front of the cheering crowd, and Marcus felt something shift inside him. A wall he had built so long ago he had forgotten it existed. My investor meeting is in 90 minutes, Marcus said. Come with me. Raymond raised an eyebrow. Looking like this? We'll fix that on the way. Marcus was already moving toward the driver's door. But I want you there. I want you to see what we're building, and I want your opinion on whether our thermal regulation system is going to explode like that prototype at Meridian. Raymond actually laughed. It was a rusty sound like something that hadn't been used in years. You might not like my opinion. I didn't like you when you first walked up to me, Marcus replied. I was wrong about that. Maybe I'm wrong about other things too. He opened the passenger door and gestured for Raymond to get in. Raymond hesitated, looking at the luxury interior of the car he had just saved. 4 years of sleeping in shelters, of being invisible, of being dismissed and forgotten, and now this. What about your security chief? Raymond asked quietly. He knows about Meridian. He was part of what happened to me. Then he's about to have a very bad day. Marcus's voice was cold. Get in the car, Raymond. We have a meeting to make and a few wrongs to right. Raymond Carter climbed into the Titan Apex and Marcus Webb closed the door behind him. As they pulled away from the curb, leaving the cheering crowd and the frustrated Hendrix behind, neither man knew exactly what the next few hours would bring, but they both knew that nothing would ever be the same. In the rearview mirror, Marcus caught a glimpse of Jennifer Okafor still recording her face, alight with the recognition that she had stumbled onto the story of her career. And somewhere in the passenger seat, Raymond Carter allowed himself to hope for the first time in 4 years. The engine purred beneath them whole again, ready for whatever came next. Just like them. The Titan Apex carved through San Francisco traffic with the smooth precision of a machine that had no right to be running at all. Marcus kept glancing at the diagnostic screen every few seconds, half expecting the warnings to return, half amazed that they hadn't. Raymond sat in the passenger seat with his hands folded in his lap, looking straight ahead. He hadn't spoken since they pulled away from the crowd. You're quiet, Marcus said finally. I'm thinking. About what? Raymond turned to look at him. Looked him. About why you changed your mind. You were ready to have me arrested. Then you weren't. Something shifted. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. Does it matter? It matters to me. The silence stretched between them for a long moment. Marcus could feel Raymond's gaze on him, patient and penetrating. My mother, Marcus said finally. Something you said reminded me of something she used to tell me, about how people see us, how they decide what we're worth based on what we look like instead of what we know. Smart woman. She was. Marcus's voice caught slightly. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. She spent her last weeks telling me she was proud of me, but I always wondered if she really was, if she could see what I had become. What do you think you've become? The question hit harder than Marcus expected. He didn't answer. Raymond nodded slowly. You built walls. I understand that. When you come from nothing, when you fight your way up through people who want you to fail, you learn to protect yourself. The problem is, sometimes, the walls keep out the wrong things. Like what? Like the people who could help you, like the parts of yourself that remember where you came from. Raymond paused. Like the man you used to be before success made you forget. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. You don't know anything about who I used to be. I know more than you think. Something in Raymond's tone made Marcus look over sharply. What does that mean? It means I've been watching you for longer than today, Marcus Webb. It means this isn't the first time our paths have crossed. The words hung in the air like a held breath. Explain, Marcus demanded. Not yet. Raymond turned back to face the windshield. First we have a meeting to attend, then we talk. Marcus wanted to push harder, but his phone buzzed with an incoming call. His assistant, Denise. Marcus, where are you? The investors are asking questions. Mr. Chen arrived early and he's been asking about the car situation. I'm 15 minutes out. Is everything ready? The presentation is loaded, but Marcus... Denise's voice dropped lower. There's something else. James Hendricks called the office. He said he needs to speak with you urgently about a security matter. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. What did you tell him? I told him you were unavailable. But Marcus, he sounded angry. Really angry. He said something about unauthorized access to proprietary technology and mentioned pressing charges. Raymond heard every word through the car's speakers. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Ignore him, Marcus said. If he calls again, tell him I'll speak with him after my meeting, and only after. Marcus, are you sure he's the security chief for the entire Prometheus campus? If he decides to make trouble, let him try. Marcus ended the call and glanced at Raymond. Looks like your friend Hendricks isn't happy. He's not my friend. He's one of the men who destroyed my life. Raymond's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. And he's scared right now, scared of what I might tell you, what I might prove. What can you prove? Everything. And Raymond reached into his worn jacket and pulled out a folded envelope yellowed with age and handling. I've kept this for 4 years, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone who might actually listen. What is it? The truth about what happened at Meridian. Names, dates, decisions, who knew what and when they knew it. He tucked the envelope back into his jacket. But that's for later. Right now, you need to focus on your investors. Marcus pulled up to a high-end clothier on Market Street, one of those places where a single tie cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had called ahead while driving. They would be ready. We're here, Marcus said. Time to make you look like the genius you are. Raymond looked at the storefront with an unreadable expression. I haven't worn a suit in 4 years. Then it's time you remembered what it feels like. They walked into the store together, and the transformation began. The tailors at Hamilton and Ross had seen everything in their 40 years of business. Tech billionaires, movie stars, politicians desperate for a makeover before a press conference. Nothing surprised them anymore. But Raymond Carter surprised them. The head tailor, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, took one look at Raymond and stopped mid-sentence. His face went pale. Professor Carter. Raymond froze. Giuseppe. Mio Dio. Giuseppe crossed himself. We thought you were dead. Everyone thought you were dead. Marcus looked between them sharply. You know each other. Professor Carter was one of our best customers. Giuseppe said, his voice thick with emotion. 20 years he came here. Every suit, every shirt. Then one day, nothing. He disappeared. We heard rumors, terrible rumors, but no one knew for certain. Raymond stood very still. The rumors were exaggerated. But you are alive. You are here. Giuseppe stepped forward and embraced Raymond without hesitation, expensive suit pressed against worn army jacket. Where have you been, my friend? What happened to you? It's a long story, Giuseppe. Then you will tell me later, over wine, like the old days. Giuseppe stepped back, his professional demeanor returning even as tears glistened in his eyes. But first we dress you, like before, like you deserve. The next 20 minutes were a blur of measurements and fabric selections. Giuseppe worked with the intensity of an artist given a second chance at his masterpiece. His assistants brought suit after suit, shirt after shirt, until Raymond stood before the mirror in a charcoal three-piece that made him look like a different man entirely. Marcus watched the transformation with growing amazement. The homeless man who had approached his car was gone. In his place stood someone who looked like he belonged in boardrooms and corner offices. Someone who looked like what he was a genius. The beard, Giuseppe said thoughtfully. We can trim it quickly, shape it properly. Do it, Marcus said before Raymond could object. 10 minutes later, Raymond's gray-streaked beard had been transformed from unkempt to distinguished. His hair had been styled. He looked like a senior executive, the kind of man people listen to without question. Better, Giuseppe said with satisfaction. Now you look like Professor Carter again. Raymond stared at his reflection for a long moment. Marcus saw something complicated moving across his face. Pain and memory and something that might have been hope. "Thank you, Giuseppe." "No thanks necessary. You paid for a lifetime of suits years ago. This is nothing." Giuseppe pressed a business card into Raymond's hand. "When this is over, whatever it is, you come see me. We talk. Yes, yes." Marcus checked his watch. 52 minutes until the meeting. They were back on schedule. "We need to go," he said. Raymond nodded, but he didn't move immediately. He was still looking at his reflection at the man he used to be staring back at him. "It's strange," he said quietly. "I spent 4 years becoming invisible, learning to be no one. And now you're someone again." Raymond turned to face Marcus. "I was always someone. The world just forgot how to see it." The drive to Quantum Dynamics headquarters took 18 minutes. Marcus used the time to brief Raymond on the presentation, the investors, the technology they were pitching. "We've developed a new thermal regulation system for quantum computing," Marcus explained. "Revolutionary stuff. Could change the entire industry. But we've hit some problems in the testing phase. Inconsistent results. Unexplained failures." "What kind of failures?" "Temperature spikes. Cooling loop disruptions. Sound familiar?" Raymond's expression sharpened. "Show me the specifications." Marcus handed him his tablet with the technical documents. Raymond scrolled through them rapidly, his eyes moving with the speed of someone who could process complex information at a glance. "Here," Raymond said, suddenly pointing at a diagram, "and here, you've made the same mistake Meridian made. The junction between your secondary and tertiary cooling systems uses an alloy that can't handle the stress variance at quantum operational temperatures. That's the same flaw you identified in my car." "It's the same flaw I identified 15 years ago, and it's still being ignored because fixing it would be expensive and time-consuming." Raymond shook his head. "The entire industry is built on this vulnerability. Every quantum cooling system in production has some version of this problem." "Can you fix it?" "I already did, 15 years ago." Raymond's voice was bitter. "The solution is in the original patent, patent TT5729QX. But the implementation was altered during production to save costs. The vulnerability was created deliberately to meet budget constraints." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Are you saying our system is based on a deliberately compromised design?" "I'm saying your system, like everyone else's, is built on a foundation that was sabotaged by accountants before it ever left the lab." Raymond handed the tablet back. "The good news is, I know how to fix it. The real question is whether you're willing to do what it takes." "What does it take?" "Time, money, and the courage to admit that everything you've built is based on a lie." They pulled into the Quantum Dynamics parking garage with 31 minutes to spare. Marcus sat in the driver's seat for a moment, processing everything Raymond had told him. "This meeting," Marcus said slowly, "I was going to ask these investors for $50 million to scale production of a system you're telling me is fundamentally flawed." "Yes." "And if I go in there and give that presentation, I'll be lying to them." "Yes." Marcus closed his eyes. $50 million, 3 years of work, his company's future, everything he had sacrificed to build. "What would you do?" he asked quietly. "If you were me," Raymond was silent for a long moment. "I would tell the truth. I would show them the flaw and the solution. I would ask them to invest in something real instead of something broken. That could destroy my company, or it could save it." Raymond met his gaze steadily. "The choice is yours, Marcus. It always has been." Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at this man who had been homeless 24 hours ago, who had saved his car with pencil graphite, who was now asking him to risk everything on the truth. "Let's go, Marcus said. "We have investors to educate." The Quantum Dynamics boardroom occupied the entire top floor of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased San Francisco's skyline. 12 investors sat around the massive conference table representing some of the largest tech investment firms in the world. Victor Chen sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. He had arrived early, just as Denise had warned, and he had clearly been assessing the situation. Marcus entered the room with Raymond at his side, and the murmuring stopped immediately. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, his voice steady, "thank you for your patience. Before we begin our presentation, I'd like to introduce someone. This is Dr. Raymond Carter, former Chief Thermal Engineer at Meridian Aerospace, and the original inventor of the quantum cooling technology that our entire industry is built on." The reaction was immediate. Whispers rippled around the table. Several investors pulled out phones, presumably searching for information on Raymond Carter. Dr. Carter, Victor Chen said slowly, I believe I recognize that name. There was some controversy several years ago. There was, Raymond replied calmly. I was falsely accused of causing a prototype failure at Meridian. The investigation cleared me 18 months later, but by then my career had been destroyed. And now you're here, with Mr. Webb. Why, Raymond glanced at Marcus, who nodded slightly. Because 2 hours ago I fixed Mr. Webb's car on a street corner using emergency sealant and pencil graphite. And in the process I discovered that the same design flaw that nearly destroyed his vehicle exists in the quantum cooling system you're being asked to invest in today. The silence in the room was absolute. One of the investors, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Vance, leaned forward. Are you saying that quantum dynamics technology is flawed? I'm saying that every quantum cooling system currently in production is flawed, Raymond replied, including ours, including our competitors. The vulnerability was introduced 15 years ago when manufacturing shortcuts were substituted for proper engineering. I've spent the last 4 years developing a solution. On the streets? Another investor said, skeptically. While homeless. Genius doesn't require a corner office, Mr. Morrison. Raymond's voice remained steady. It requires a working mind and the will to use it. Marcus stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I brought Dr. Carter here today because I believe in transparency. I could have given you our standard presentation, taken your money, and dealt with the consequences later. Instead, I'm asking you to invest in something better, a system that actually works. Victor Chen studied Marcus for a long moment. You're asking us to invest more money in a problem we didn't know existed. I'm asking you to invest in a solution that no one else has. Marcus gestured to Raymond. Dr. Carter has spent the last 4 years developing fixes for the vulnerabilities in quantum thermal regulation. He holds patents that could revolutionize the industry, and as of today, he's consulting exclusively for quantum dynamics. Raymond raised an eyebrow slightly at this news, but said nothing. Show us, Victor said simply. Show us what you have. Raymond nodded and approached the presentation screen. His hands moved across the controls with familiar ease, pulling up diagrams that made the other engineers in the room lean forward with sudden interest. This is the standard quantum cooling architecture, Raymond began, used by Quantum Dynamics, by Titan Motors, by every major tech company working with quantum systems. Notice the junction point between the secondary and tertiary loops. He highlighted a specific area. This is where the flaw exists. Under normal operation, the stress on this junction is manageable. But at peak quantum processing loads, the temperature differential creates microfractures that compound over time. Eventually, you get catastrophic failure. How eventually? Patricia Vance asked. Depending on usage patterns, anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Raymond pulled up another diagram. This is my solution, a modified alloy composition for the junction combined with a pressure redistribution system that eliminates the stress accumulation entirely. Why wasn't this implemented originally? Cost. My design added approximately $1,200 per unit and 3 weeks to the production timeline. Raymond's voice was flat. The executives at Meridian decided that was unacceptable. They overrode my specifications and released a compromised design. And then blamed you when it failed, Victor said quietly. Yes. Simil. The room was silent for a moment. Then Victor turned to Marcus. You said Dr. Carter holds patents. What exactly are we talking about? Marcus looked at Raymond, who reached into his jacket and withdrew several folded sheets of paper worn and creased from years of handling. These are provisional patents I developed while I was homeless, Raymond said. Sketched on newspaper margins, refined in public library computers. 7 distinct innovations in quantum thermal regulation, each one addressing a critical vulnerability in current systems. He spread the papers on the conference table. The investors leaned in, and Marcus saw their expressions change as they recognized the significance of what they were looking at. This is... Patricia Vance trailed off, her eyes scanning the technical specifications. This is revolutionary. This is what happens when you give a problem to someone with nothing to do but think about it for 4 years, Raymond replied. Victor Chen picked up one of the papers, studying it intently. Dr. Carter, these patents alone could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Why didn't you sell them? Why didn't you approach a company, any company with these? I tried, repeatedly. Raymond's voice carried old pain. But when you're homeless, no one returns your calls. When your name is associated with scandal, no one wants to listen. I was invisible, Mr. Chen. Not because I had nothing to offer, but because society had decided I was worthless. The door to the conference room opened suddenly. Denise stood there, her face pale. Marcus, I'm sorry to interrupt, but James Hendricks is in the lobby. He's demanding to see you. He says it's urgent. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Tell him I'm in a meeting. He has security personnel with him, building security. He's threatening to have Dr. Carter removed for trespassing and industrial espionage. The investors exchanged glances. Victor Chen's expression hardened. I was not aware this was going to be a dramatic production, Mr. Webb. Neither was I. Marcus turned to Raymond. Stay here. I'll handle this. No. Raymond stood. I've been running from James Hendricks and people like him for 4 years. I'm done running. He walked toward the door, and Marcus had no choice but to follow. In the lobby, Hendricks stood with 4 building security guards, his face flushed with barely contained rage. There he is, Hendricks said, pointing at Raymond. That man is a known fraud who has somehow talked his way into this building. I want him removed immediately. On what grounds? Marcus stepped between Hendricks and Raymond. Industrial espionage. Unauthorized access to proprietary technology. Take your pick. Dr. Carter is my guest. He's here at my invitation in my building advising my company. Dr. Carter is a disgraced former engineer who was terminated for cause from Meridian Aerospace. Whatever lies he's told you... Lies? Raymond's voice cut through Hendricks's bluster like a blade. Let's talk about lies, James. Let's talk about the memo you signed off on 2 days before the prototype test. The one that authorized the production shortcuts I warned against. Hendricks's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Memo MRD 7749. Raymond stepped closer. You signed it. You and 4 other board members. You knew the risks and you authorized the test anyway because the investors were getting impatient. That's a sealed document. How could you possibly... Because I kept a copy. Raymond pulled the yellowed envelope from his jacket. I kept it for 4 years waiting for the right moment. Waiting for someone to listen. Hendricks stared at the envelope like it was a loaded gun pointed at his chest. You're bluffing. Am I? Raymond opened the envelope and withdrew several pages. Shall I read it aloud? In front of all these witnesses, in front of the security cameras, recording everything. The lobby had gone completely silent. The security guards looked uncertain, clearly unsure whose orders to follow. The receptionist was watching with wide eyes, her hand hovering over her phone. James? Marcus's voice was cold. I think you should leave. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Hendricks said, but his voice had lost its authority. This man is dangerous. He'll destroy everything he touches. The only thing I want to destroy, Raymond said quietly, is the lie you've been living for 4 years. The lie that cost me everything while you walked away without a scratch. The settlement was sealed. You signed an NDA? I signed under duress after your lawyers threatened to destroy what little remained of my life. Raymond held up the documents. But these papers weren't covered by that agreement. They're my personal notes, my records. And they tell a very different story than the one you've been telling. Hendricks looked around the lobby at the watching faces at the security cameras at Marcus Webb standing firmly between him and his target. This isn't over, he said finally. No, huh? Raymond agreed. It's just beginning. Hendricks turned and walked out of the building, his security escort trailing behind him. The door closed with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Are you okay? I've been waiting 4 years for that moment. Raymond looked at the documents in his hand. I thought I would feel more satisfied. How do you feel? Tired, and ready for this to be over. They returned to the boardroom where the investors had clearly been discussing what they had witnessed. The energy in the room had shifted. Something had changed. Victor Chen stood as they entered. Dr. Carter, that was quite a confrontation. I apologize for the disruption. Don't. Victor's expression was unreadable. In my experience, the measure of a man is not how he behaves when things are going well. It's how he behaves when he's under attack. He picked up one of Raymond's patent documents. I've made my decision. I'm prepared to invest $75 million in quantum dynamics conditional on Dr. Carter joining the company in a senior technical role with full authority over the thermal regulation project. The number hung in the air. It was $25 million more than Marcus had dared to hope for. Mr. Chen, Marcus began. I'm not finished. Victor held up a hand. I also want full access to whatever documentation Dr. Carter has regarding the Meridian incident. If there was corporate malfeasance, I want to know about it. Not for revenge, but for due diligence. I don't invest in industries built on lies. He looked at Raymond. Is that acceptable to you, Dr. Carter? Raymond was silent for a long moment, then he nodded. It's acceptable. Good. Victor turned to the other investors. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have a deal to discuss. The next 2 hours were a blur of negotiations, contracts, and handshakes. By the time the last investor left the boardroom, Quantum Dynamics had secured $120 million in new funding, and Raymond Carter had a job offer that would change his life. Marcus and Raymond stood alone in the empty boardroom as the sun began to set over San Francisco. You could have told me about the documents, Marcus said, about Hendricks, about everything. Would you have believed me? This morning when I approached your car, would you have believed any of it? Marcus considered the question honestly. No, probably not. That's why I waited. Raymond walked to the window looking out at the city. Trust has to be earned. Especially when you look like me and live like I've been living. What happens now? Now. Raymond turned to face him. Now we fix your thermal regulation system. We implement the solutions I've been developing for 4 years. And we prove that the industry can do better than cutting corners and blaming the people who try to stop them. And Hendricks will face consequences. Maybe not legal ones if the settlement holds, but professional ones, social ones. The truth has a way of spreading, Marcus, even when powerful people try to suppress it. Marcus nodded slowly. I have one more question. Ask it. Earlier you said this wasn't the first time our paths had crossed. What did you mean? Raymond was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. 12 years ago, I gave a keynote speech at the National Engineering Conference in Chicago. I talked about the future of thermal regulation, about the potential for quantum cooling systems to revolutionize computing. I was there, Marcus said slowly. I remember that speech. I was just starting quantum dynamics. I was nobody, but that speech, it inspired me. It made me believe this industry was worth fighting for. I know, Raymond smiled slightly, because after the speech, a young man approached me. Eager, brilliant, full of questions. He told me he was going to build a company that would change the world, and I believed him. Marcus felt the memory surfacing now, sharp and clear. A conversation he had forgotten, a moment of connection with a stranger who had seemed larger than life. That was you, Marcus breathed. I talked to you for almost an hour. You gave me advice. You told me to never compromise on quality, no matter what the accountant said. And you've remembered that advice, even if you forgot who gave it. I didn't forget, I didn't recognize you. You look so different now. 12 years and 4 years of homelessness will do that to a person. Raymond's voice carried no bitterness, only truth. But I remembered you, Marcus. When I saw your car smoking on that street corner, I recognized you immediately, and I knew I couldn't walk away. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. All this time he had thought he was helping a stranger, but Raymond had been watching over him for years, waiting for the right moment, guided by a connection Marcus had forgotten ever existed. Why didn't you tell me this morning when I was ready to have you arrested? Why didn't you just say who you were? Because it shouldn't have mattered. Raymond's voice was firm. I shouldn't need a personal connection to be treated with dignity. My knowledge should have been enough. My offer to help should have been enough. You're right. Marcus's voice was quiet. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be better. Raymond placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You made a choice today. You chose to listen when everyone around you was telling you not to. That's the man I saw 12 years ago. That's the man I believed in. What if I hadn't listened? What if I'd let Hendricks take you away? Then I would have found another way. I've been waiting 4 years, Marcus. I'm patient. Marcus laughed despite himself. Patient. You fixed my car with pencil graphite and talked your way into a $100 million investment deal. That's not patience, that's determination. Same thing, different timeline. Raymond dropped his hand. Now, I believe you promised me answers about my questions, about how I ended up on the streets, about what really happened at Meridian. I did, but that's a long conversation and we should probably have it somewhere other than an empty boardroom. Agreed. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Raymond, what you did today, I don't have words for it. You don't need words, you need action. Raymond followed him toward the door. The words come later when the work is done. They walked out of the boardroom together into an evening that felt different than any evening before it. The sun was setting over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, and somewhere in the city, James Hendricks was contemplating the collapse of his carefully constructed lies. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Denise. Jennifer Okafor from the Chronicle has been calling. She says she has a story to tell. About Dr. Carter, about Meridian, about everything. What should I tell her? Marcus looked at Raymond. The reporter from this morning. She wants to talk. Let her. Raymond's expression was calm. The truth has been buried long enough. It's time to let it breathe. Marcus typed his response. Set up a meeting. Tomorrow. I want to be there when Dr. Carter tells his story. He sent the message and pocketed his phone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside two men from vastly different worlds who had somehow found their way to the same place at the same time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, new battles to fight. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, Raymond Carter wasn't invisible anymore, and Marcus Webb had finally remembered what it meant to see. The morning arrived with a phone call that changed everything. Marcus was still in bed when his phone rang at 6:47 a.m. He grabbed it without looking at the screen, expecting Denise with another crisis. Mr. Webb? The voice was unfamiliar. Female. Cold. This is Sandra Mitchell from Mitchell & Associates. I represent James Hendricks. Marcus sat up immediately. It's 7 in the morning. I'm aware of the time. I'm calling to inform you that my client intends to file a lawsuit against Quantum Dynamics and Dr. Meyer, Raymond Carter, for breach of confidentiality, defamation, and tortious interference with business relations. On what grounds? Dr. Carter signed a non-disclosure agreement as part of his separation from Meridian Aerospace. By sharing proprietary information with you and your investors, he has violated the terms of that agreement. Additionally, his public statements regarding my client have caused significant damage to Mr. Hendricks's professional reputation. Marcus laughed. He couldn't help it. Your client's reputation was damaged by his own actions 4 years ago. Dr. Carter is simply telling the truth. The truth is a matter of legal interpretation, Mr. Webb. I suggest you advise Dr. Carter to cease all public statements regarding Meridian Aerospace immediately. Otherwise, the consequences will be severe. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. Good day, Mr. Webb. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment, then dialed Raymond's number. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again, same result. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He called Denise. I need to find Raymond Carter, now. He's not answering his phone. No, and I just got a call from Hendricks's lawyer. They're planning to sue. Oh God, Marcus, there's something else. Well, Jennifer Okafor has been calling all morning. She says she has information about Dr. Carter that she needs to share with you before her story goes live. What kind of information? She wouldn't say, but Marcus, she sounded worried. Not excited like a reporter with a scoop, worried. Marcus was already getting dressed. Set up a meeting, 1 hour, and keep trying Raymond's phone. Where are you going? To find him before someone else does. The West Side Shelter occupied a converted warehouse in one of San Francisco's roughest neighborhoods. Marcus had driven past it hundreds of times without ever really seeing it. Now he stood at its entrance feeling completely out of place in his expensive suit. The shelter coordinator, a middle-aged black woman named Grace Williams, met him at the door. Her expression was guarded. Mr. Webb, I saw you on the news yesterday with Raymond. I'm looking for him. Is he here? He left about an hour ago, said he needed to take care of something. Grace studied Marcus with eyes that had seen too much. You know, in 3 years, Raymond never missed a class, never missed a meal service, never missed anything. This morning was the first time. Where would he go, huh? I don't know, but wherever it is, he didn't want company. Grace paused. Mr. Webb Raymond is a good man, the best man I've ever met in this work. Whatever happened yesterday, whatever's coming next, please don't let them destroy him again. I'm trying to help him. Are you? Or are you trying to help yourself? The question hit harder than Marcus expected. He didn't have an answer. His phone buzzed, a text from Denise. Found him Oakland Cemetery, his mother's grave. Marcus was in his car before the message finished loading. The drive to Oakland took 43 minutes. Marcus found Raymond standing alone in front of a simple headstone, his new suit a stark contrast to the weathered graves surrounding him. Eleanor Marie Carter. 1942-2021. Beloved mother, devoted teacher. Education sets you free. Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to intrude. Raymond didn't turn around, but he spoke. She died thinking I was a fraud. Did I tell you that you mentioned it yesterday? 3 months before the investigation cleared me. 3 months. Raymond's voice was steady, but there was something broken underneath. She spent her last weeks apologizing to me, apologizing for believing in me, for pushing me toward a career that destroyed me. Raymond. I couldn't tell her the truth, that she was right to believe in me, that I hadn't done anything wrong. The NDA prevented me from discussing the case with anyone, including my own mother. He finally turned to face Marcus. Do you know what that does to a person? To watch your mother die, believing you're a failure, knowing you can't say anything to change her mind. Marcus had no words. He simply stood there bearing witness. She taught elementary school for 42 years. 6th grade science. Every year she told her students the same thing: education sets you free. Work hard, learn everything you can, and nothing can stop you. Raymond looked back at the headstone. She was wrong, but she died before she knew it. She wasn't wrong. Marcus stepped closer. She was right about you. The system failed, not her belief. The system is made of people, Marcus. People who decided I was guilty before they had evidence. People who found it easier to blame the black engineer than to admit their own mistakes. People like James Hendricks who signed off on shortcuts they knew were dangerous and then pointed the finger at me when it all fell apart. Hendricks' lawyer called me this morning. They're going to sue. Raymond laughed bitterly. Of course they are. That's how it works. When the truth threatens powerful people, they use lawyers instead of lies. We can fight them. With what? The documents I have are my personal notes. They prove what happened, but a good lawyer can argue they're fabricated. Hearsay, the word of a homeless man against a corporate executive. Raymond shook his head. I've been down this road before, Marcus. I know how it ends. It ends differently this time. You're not alone. Raymond looked at him for a long moment. Why do you care? Yesterday morning you were ready to have me arrested. Now you're standing in a cemetery promising to fight for me. What changed? I changed. Marcus met his gaze directly. You reminded me of something I forgot. Something my mother used to tell me before she died. That success isn't about how high you climb. It's about who you bring with you. Pretty words. True words. I've spent 20 years climbing Raymond, building my company, proving everyone wrong, and somewhere along the way I forgot why I started. I forgot that I wanted to build something that mattered, not just something that made money. He gestured around them at the cemetery at the city beyond. You showed me what I'd become. A man who looks at someone like you and sees a threat instead of a person. A man who builds walls instead of bridges. I don't want to be that man anymore. Raymond was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer. My wife left me, during the investigation, not because she didn't believe me, but because she couldn't handle the pressure. The reporters outside our house, the threatening phone calls, the neighbors who stopped talking to us. I didn't know you were married. For 12 years. Her name was Denise. She was a pediatric surgeon. Brilliant, kind, the best thing that ever happened to me. Raymond's jaw tightened. She moved to Seattle, remarried 2 years later. I saw the announcement in the newspaper. One of the other shelter residents showed it to me, not knowing who she was. Did you ever try to contact her? Once, after I was cleared. I wrote her a letter explaining everything. She never responded. He paused. I don't blame her. She needed to move on. I was just collateral damage. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Denise. Jennifer Okafor is here. She says it's urgent. The reporter is waiting for us, Marcus said. She has information, something she says you need to hear before her story goes live. Raymond straightened his shoulders. Then let's go hear it. Are you sure after everything you just told me? I've been hiding from the truth for 4 years, Marcus. It's time to face whatever's coming. Shit. They drove back to Quantum Dynamics in silence, each man lost in his own thoughts. When they arrived, Jennifer Okafor was waiting in the lobby, looking nothing like the aggressive reporter who had confronted them the day before. She stood as they approached, her face troubled. Dr. Carter, Mr. Webb, thank you for meeting with me. You said you had information, huh? Marcus said. What is it? Jennifer glanced around nervously. Is there somewhere private we can talk? They took her to Marcus's office. She sat on the edge of a chair, clutching a tablet like a lifeline. I've been investigating the Meridian incident for 3 years, she began, ever since I started covering the tech industry. Something about the story never added up. The timeline was wrong. The explanations didn't make sense. And Raymond's voice was carefully neutral. And I finally found someone willing to talk. A former Meridian employee who was in the room when the decision was made to override your safety protocols. Jennifer paused. Dr. Carter, the failure wasn't just negligence. It was deliberate sabotage. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. What do you mean, sabotage? Marcus demanded. I mean someone intentionally altered the testing parameters to ensure the prototype would fail. Someone who wanted the project to be blamed on Dr. Carter so that Meridian could collect insurance money and walk away from a project that was over budget and behind schedule. Raymond had gone very still. Who? Jennifer looked at him with something like pity. James Hendricks, and he wasn't alone. There were 4 other board members involved. They called themselves the Adjustment Committee. They made the decision 3 days before the test. That's not possible. Raymond's voice was barely a whisper. The investigation found that management overrode my protocols, but they concluded it was negligence, not intent. The investigation was compromised. 2 of the investigators were later hired by companies connected to Hendricks. The third died in a car accident 6 months after the report was released. Jennifer pulled up documents on her tablet. I have emails, Dr. Carter. Internal communications between Hendricks and the other board members. They knew exactly what they were doing. Raymond took the tablet with trembling hands. Marcus watched him read, watched the color drain from his face. My God, Raymond breathed. They planned it. All of it. The failure, the blame, the cover-up. They planned it from the beginning. They needed a scapegoat, Jennifer said quietly. Someone credible enough to take the fall, but vulnerable enough not to fight back. You were perfect, black brilliant, and outspoken about safety concerns. They knew you'd never go along with their plans, so they made you the villain. Why are you telling us this? Marcus asked. Why not just publish the story? Because Hendricks knows I have this information. He's been threatening me for weeks. Anonymous calls, lawyers. Someone even broke into my apartment last month. Jennifer's hands were shaking. I'm publishing the story today, but I wanted you to know first, both of you, because when this goes live, everything is going to change. Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen and felt his blood run cold. It's Hendricks. Don't answer it, Jennifer said quickly. No. Raymond stood up, his expression hardening. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Marcus hesitated for only a moment, then accepted the call. Webb. Hendricks' voice was different now, no longer arrogant, desperate. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Listen to me. I know what that reporter has been telling you. I know what she thinks she found. But you don't understand the whole picture. Then explain it to me. Not over the phone. Meet me. 1 hour. Fisherman's Wharf. Pier 39. Come alone. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll release information about Dr. Carter that will destroy whatever sympathy he's managed to generate. Information that wasn't included in the original investigation. Raymond leaned toward the phone. What information? A pause. Then, hello, Raymond? I wondered if you were listening. Ask yourself this. Why do you think your wife really left you? Why do you think she never responded to your letter? The color drained from Raymond's face. 1 hour, Webb? Pier 39? Come alone or everyone suffers. The line went dead. The silence in Marcus's office was suffocating. Raymond stood frozen, his hands clenched at his sides. What did he mean? Marcus asked quietly. About your wife? I don't know. Raymond's voice was hollow. I don't know. Jennifer stood up. Doctor, Carter, whatever. Whatever he's threatening, you can't let it stop you. My story goes live in 4 hours. Once it's out there, whatever leverage he thinks he has won't matter. You don't know that. Raymond turned to face her. You don't know what he might have. What he might have done. Then let me come with you. To the meeting. I can... No. Marcus's voice was firm. He said to come alone. If he sees anyone else, he might not talk. And if he's planning something, if this is a trap, then I'll deal with it. Marcus looked at Raymond. Stay here. With Jennifer. If I'm not back in 2 hours, publish the story anyway. I'm coming with you. Raymond's jaw was set. He'll run if he sees you. Then I'll wait in the car, but I'm not letting you face him alone. Raymond met Marcus's gaze. You said I'm not alone anymore. Prove it. Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to protect Raymond from whatever was coming, but he recognized the look in the older man's eye, the look of someone who was done hiding. Fine, but stay in the car until I signal you. They left Jennifer at the office with instructions to contact Denise if they weren't back by 1 p.m. The drive to Fisherman's Wharf took 27 minutes, each one stretching like an eternity. Marcus parked in a lot near Pier 39 and turned to Raymond. Whatever happens in there, remember why we're doing this. Not for revenge, for truth. I know. Raymond's voice was steady, but his hands were clenched in his lap. I've been waiting 4 years for answers, Marcus. I'm not going to let fear stop me now. Marcus nodded and got out of the car. He walked toward the pier, feeling Raymond's eyes on his back. Hendricks was waiting near the end of the pier alone, looking nothing like the confident security chief who had tried to have Raymond removed the day before. His suit was rumpled, his face haggard. You came, Hendricks said. I wasn't sure you would. You threatened my friend. You threatened a man who's already lost everything because of you. I had to know why. Because I'm desperate, Webb. Because everything I've built is about to come crashing down, and I need to know if there's any way to stop it. There isn't. Marcus kept his voice cold. Jennifer Okafor has everything. The emails, the testimony, the proof that you deliberately sabotaged the Meridian Project and blamed Raymond Carter. Hendricks flinched. She doesn't have everything. What's that supposed to mean? It means there are things that weren't in those emails. Things that only I know. Things that could make this situation worse for everyone, including your precious Dr. Carter. Like what? Hendricks was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Raymond's wife, Denise. She didn't leave him because of the pressure. She left him because of me. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Explain. We had an affair, before the investigation. I met her at a company event, and one thing led to another. Hendricks laughed bitterly. Raymond was so busy with his work, so obsessed with his safety protocols, that he never noticed his wife was lonely. I did. You're lying. I'm not. And I have proof. Letters, photographs, things that Raymond never knew about. Why would you tell me this? Why would you admit to destroying his marriage on top of everything else? Because I want you to understand. Hendricks stepped closer, his eyes wild. I didn't set out to ruin Raymond Carter. I was just covering my tracks. The affair was going to come out eventually. When the prototype failed, when we needed someone to blame, it was convenient to choose the man whose wife I was sleeping with. One scandal covered up another. You're a monster. I'm a man who made terrible choices and has spent 4 years trying to live with them. Hendricks's voice cracked. I can't do it anymore, Webb. The guilt, the lies, the constant fear of being exposed. I'm done. What do you want? I want to confess, publicly, on the record. In exchange, I want immunity from criminal prosecution and protection from the other board members who were involved. Marcus stared at him. You want to turn on your co-conspirators? They're already turning on me, the moment Okafor started asking questions. They scattered like rats. I'm the only one left holding the bag. Hendricks laughed again, a broken sound. I thought I was protected. I thought they'd stand by me. I was wrong. And the information about Raymond's wife, about the affair, it dies with me. If you give me what I want, I'll never speak of it again. Raymond doesn't need to know. Marcus looked at this broken man, this architect of so much suffering, and felt something unexpected. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. The understanding of how fear and weakness could lead good people to do terrible things. You're wrong about that, Marcus said quietly. Wrong about what Raymond does need to know. He's spent 4 years wondering why his wife really left, why she never responded to his letter. He deserves the truth, even if it's painful. If you tell him, he'll want to kill me. Maybe, but he won't, because Raymond Carter is a better man than you or I could ever be. Marcus turned and walked back toward the parking lot. He didn't look back at Hendricks standing alone on the pier with his confession and his guilt. Raymond was out of the car the moment Marcus appeared, his face tight with anxiety. What happened? What did he say? Marcus stopped in front of him, took a breath, and told him everything. He watched Raymond's face as the truth sank in. The affair, the betrayal, the real reason his wife had left. He watched the pain flood Raymond's eyes, followed by something harder, something that looked like the end of hope. She never loved me, Raymond said finally. Not really, not at the end. You don't know that. I know she was sleeping with the man who destroyed my career. I know she left me while I was fighting for my life. I know she never answered my letter because she was probably with him when it arrived. Raymond's voice was flat, drained of all emotion. I know enough. Raymond. I need to be alone. Raymond turned and started walking not toward the car, but toward the water. Don't follow me. I can't just let you. You can, and you will. Raymond stopped, but didn't turn around. You've given me truth today, Marcus. More truth than I've had in 4 years. Now I need time to decide what to do with it. Marcus watched him walk away, and for the first time since this all began, he didn't know what to do next. The hours that followed were the longest of Marcus's life. He returned to quantum dynamics and found Jennifer Okafor waiting her story ready to publish. He told her about Hendrix's confession, funnied about his willingness to cooperate. She agreed to delay publication by 24 hours to incorporate the new information. He tried calling Raymond 14 times. Each call went to voicemail. He drove to the shelter, to the cemetery, to every place he could think of where Raymond might go. Nothing. At 6:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after Hendrix's lawyer had called, Marcus received a text from an unknown number. Pier 7, come alone, it's Raymond. He drove faster than he'd ever driven before, running red lights and ignoring speed limits. When he arrived at Pier 7, he found Raymond sitting on the edge of the dock, his feet dangling over the water. Marcus approached slowly and sat down beside him. You scared me, Marcus said. I scared myself. Raymond's voice was hoarse. For about an hour, I stood on this pier and thought about how easy it would be to just let go, to stop fighting, to stop hurting. Marcus felt his heart clench. But you didn't? No, I didn't. Raymond finally looked at him. You know why? Tell me. Because of Destiny, the girl from the shelter, the one who asked me about quantum thermodynamics. Raymond smiled slightly. I was sitting here ready to give up, and I thought about her, about all the kids I've been teaching, about what it would mean to them if I disappeared. If the man who told them education could set them free turned out to be a liar. You're not a liar. No, but I was ready to be a quitter, and that's almost worse. Raymond stood up slowly. I've spent 4 years being invisible, Marcus. Invisible to the industry, invisible to society, invisible to myself. Today I found out that even my wife saw right through me. That's not... Let me finish. Raymond held up a hand. Today I found out that the foundation of my marriage was a lie, that the woman I loved was sleeping with the man who destroyed me, that everything I believed about my life was wrong. He turned to face Marcus fully. And you know what? It doesn't matter. What do you mean? I mean that my mother was still right. Education does set you free. Not from pain, not from betrayal, not from the cruelty of people who want to use you, but from ignorance, from helplessness, from the belief that you're powerless to change your circumstances. Raymond's voice grew stronger. I lost my job. I lost my wife. I lost my home. I lost 4 years of my life, but I never lost my mind. I never lost my knowledge. I never lost my ability to solve problems and teach others and make a difference. And as long as I have that, they haven't really beaten me. Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. What do you want to do now? I want to finish what we started. I want to fix your thermal regulation system. I want to prove that the work I did at Meridian wasn't wasted. And I want to build something that matters. Raymond paused. Can you help me do that? Yes. Marcus's voice was firm. Whatever you need. Then there's one more thing I need to do first. What? I need to see Hendrix, face to face, man to man. Marcus's stomach dropped. Raymond, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not going to hurt him. I'm not even going to yell at him. Raymond's expression was calm, almost peaceful. I just need to look him in the eye and tell him that I forgive him. Forgive him after everything he did to you. Especially after everything he did to me. Raymond smiled sadly. The hatred I've been carrying for 4 years is heavier than any burden I've ever known. It's time to set it down. And the only way to do that is to look at the man who hurt me and choose to let go. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. You're a better man than I am, Raymond Carter. No, I'm just a man who's finally learned that revenge doesn't heal anything. It just creates new wounds. And if he doesn't accept your forgiveness, if he throws it back in your face, then that's his burden to carry, not mine. Raymond extended his hand. Will you take me to him? Marcus took his hand and pulled himself to his feet. Let's go. Hendrix was still at the pier where Marcus had left him hours earlier, sitting on a bench like a man waiting for a bus that would never come. He looked up as they approached, his face registering shock at the sight of Raymond. I didn't expect to see you, Hendrix said quietly. I know. Raymond stopped a few feet away. I came to say something. If you're here to threaten me, to tell me what's coming, I'm here to forgive you. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Hendrix stared at Raymond, uncomprehending. What? You destroyed my career. You stole my wife. You took 4 years of my life and ground them into dust. Raymond's voice was steady. "And I forgive you." "Why?" Hendricks' voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" "Because carrying hatred is exhausting, because revenge wouldn't give me back what I lost, and because somewhere underneath all the terrible things you did, you're still a human being who has to live with the consequences of his choices." Raymond stepped closer. "I'm not saying what you did was okay. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences. I'm saying that I refuse to let what you did to me define the rest of my life. I'm choosing to move forward, and I hope someday you can do the same." Hendricks stared at him for a long moment, then slowly tears began to stream down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know." Raymond reached out and placed a hand on Hendricks' shoulder. "Now let's go tell the truth, together." They walked back toward Marcus's car, three men bound together by tragedy and betrayal, and perhaps the first tentative steps toward redemption. As they drove toward Quantum Dynamics headquarters, where Jennifer Okafor was waiting to record Hendricks' confession, Marcus glanced at Raymond in the rearview mirror. The older man was looking out the window at the city passing by, his face illuminated by the setting sun, and for the first time since Marcus had met him. Raymond Carter looked at peace. The story wasn't over. The hardest parts were still to come. But in that moment, driving through San Francisco with a forgiven enemy and a newly discovered friend, Marcus Webb understood something that all his money and success had never taught him. The measure of a man wasn't in what he achieved, it was in what he overcame. And Raymond Carter, homeless engineer, forgotten genius, broken husband, had overcome more than Marcus could ever imagine. The sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, new battles to fight. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, Raymond Carter had found something he thought was lost forever. Hope. The conference room at Quantum Dynamics felt different at 8:47 p.m. than it had during the investor meeting. The same table, the same chairs, the same floor-to-ceiling windows. But the energy had shifted. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about truth. Jennifer Okafor sat at one end of the table, her recording equipment arranged in front of her. Across from her sat James Hendricks, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in a single day. Marcus stood near the door, watching. Raymond sat beside Jennifer, his presence a silent reminder of everything that had been lost and everything that might still be gained. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Hendricks," Jennifer said. Hendricks looked at Raymond. "I don't know where to start." "Start at the beginning," Raymond replied quietly. "Start with the truth." Hendricks took a shaky breath. "My name is James Hendricks. For 8 years, I served on the board of directors at Meridian Aerospace. 4 years ago, I participated in a conspiracy to sabotage a prototype quantum cooling system and blame the resulting failure on Dr. Raymond Carter." Jennifer leaned forward. "Can you describe specifically what happened?" "The project was over budget and behind schedule. Our investors were threatening to pull out. We needed an exit strategy that would protect the company's insurance claims and reputation." Hendricks' voice grew steadier as he spoke, as if confession was lifting a weight he had carried too long. "I suggested that we manipulate the testing parameters to ensure a controlled failure. Something dramatic enough to justify writing off the entire project, but not so catastrophic that it would trigger a criminal investigation. And Dr. Carter. Raymond had been warning us for months about vulnerabilities in the design. He had documented everything. Memos, emails, formal reports. All of it ignored." Hendricks glanced at Raymond. "He was the perfect scapegoat. His warnings gave us cover. We could claim that the failure was due to flaws in his original engineering, not our decision to override his safety protocols." "Who else was involved?" Hendricks hesitated. This was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. The names of the other conspirators. 4 other board members: Victoria Ashworth, CFO, Richard Chen, legal counsel, David Morrison, operations director, and... Hendricks stopped. "And," Jennifer pressed, "and Senator William Blackwood. He wasn't on the board officially, but he was a silent investor. He helped coordinate the cover-up through his connections in the regulatory agencies." Marcus felt his stomach drop. A sitting United States senator. This was bigger than corporate malfeasance. This was political corruption at the highest levels. "You're saying a member of the U.S. Senate helped cover up corporate fraud?" Jennifer's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Senator Blackwood provided political cover in exchange for stock options. When the investigation started, he made phone calls, pulled strings. 2 of the investigators were reassigned. The third..." Hendricks swallowed hard. "The third was supposed to be reassigned too, but he kept digging." "What happened to him?" "He died. Car accident. 6 months after the investigation concluded. The silence in the room was absolute. Raymond's face had gone pale. "Are you saying he was murdered?" Jennifer asked. "I'm saying the timing was convenient, and I'm saying I've spent 4 years wondering if I'm partly responsible for a man's death." Marcus stepped forward. "Did you have any direct involvement in his death?" "No, I swear to God, no, but I knew something was wrong. I knew that others were capable of extreme measures, and I said nothing." Hendricks buried his face in his hands. "I said nothing." The recording continued for another hour. Hendricks provided details, dates, names, amounts. He described secret meetings, falsified documents, bribes paid to silence witnesses. By the time he finished, Jennifer had enough material to bring down not just Meridian Aerospace, but an entire network of corruption that reached into the halls of Congress. At 10:23 p.m., Jennifer stopped the recording. "This is going to change everything," she said quietly. "When this story breaks, there will be investigations, federal charges, possibly arrests." "I know." Hendricks looked at Raymond. "I deserve whatever's coming. That's not for me to decide." Raymond stood up slowly. "You've told the truth. That's all I ever wanted. It doesn't make up for what I did." "No, it doesn't, but it's a start." Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Denise. "Turn on the news, now." He grabbed the remote and switched on the conference room's display. The screen filled with breaking news coverage, and Marcus felt his blood run cold. The headline read, "Quantum Dynamics CEO harboring fugitive fraud." A news anchor was speaking rapidly. Sources confirm that Marcus Webb, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, has been sheltering Raymond Carter, a disgraced former engineer, wanted for questioning in connection with the Meridian Aerospace disaster. Carter, who has been living on the streets for the past 4 years, allegedly approached Webb yesterday and has since been given access to proprietary technology worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "They're spinning it," Jennifer said, her voice tight. "Someone leaked our meeting to the press and twisted the narrative." "Hendricks, did you—" Marcus started. "No, I swear, I haven't contacted anyone." Raymond pointed at the screen. "Look, the source." The anchor continued. "This information comes from Victoria Ashworth, former CFO of Meridian Aerospace, who claims she has evidence that Carter has been planning industrial espionage for years." "Ashworth. How many years?" Hendricks' face went gray. "She knows about the confession. She's trying to discredit everything before it comes out." Marcus grabbed his phone and called Denise. "I need you to get our legal team on the line, now, and contact Victor Chen. Tell him what's happening." "Marcus, the phones have been ringing non-stop. Reporters, investors, board members, everyone wants to know what's going on." "Tell them no comment until I say otherwise." "There's something else." Denise's voice dropped. "Security called. There are reporters outside the building, at least 30 of them, and more arriving every minute." Marcus looked at Raymond, who was watching the news coverage with an expression of weary recognition. "It's happening again," Raymond said quietly. "The same playbook, different players." "Not this time." Marcus's voice was firm. "This time we fight back." Jennifer was already on her phone. "I'm moving up the publication timeline. My editor can have the story live in 2 hours." "Sut. Do it." Marcus turned to Hendricks. "You're going to need protection. If Ashworth is willing to go public, the others might be willing to do worse." "I can take care of myself." "You can't. Not against people who might have killed a federal investigator." Marcus grabbed his keys. "We're going to my house, all of us. We'll figure out our next move from there." The drive to Marcus's home in Pacific Heights took 42 minutes, twice as long as usual, because of the reporters who followed them from Quantum Dynamics. Marcus's security team had to create a diversion to get them through the gate. By the time they were safely inside, it was nearly midnight. Marcus's housekeeper had prepared the guest rooms, but no one felt like sleeping. They gathered in Marcus's study, the 4 of them united by circumstance, if not by choice. Jennifer was on her laptop coordinating with her editor. Hendricks sat in a corner looking shell-shocked. Raymond stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. "The story goes live in 90 minutes, Jennifer announced. "Once it's out there, the narrative shifts. They can't spin what they can't control." "They'll try," Raymond said, without turning around. "They'll say I manipulated Jennifer, that I fabricated the evidence, that Hendricks was coerced into confessing." "Let them try." Marcus poured himself a drink. "We have documentation. We have testimony. We have the truth." "The truth doesn't always win, Marcus. You know that." "It does if we fight hard enough." Raymond finally turned from the window. "You really believe that—" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" Before Raymond could respond, Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Don't answer it." Jennifer said quickly. "It could be a reporter. Or it could be someone with information." Marcus accepted the call. "Who is this?" A woman's voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Webb, my name is Denise Carter. I was Raymond's wife." Marcus nearly dropped the phone. He looked at Raymond, whose face had gone completely white. "Mrs. Carter, how did you get this number?" "It doesn't matter. I saw the news coverage. I know what's happening." Her voice cracked. "I need to speak with Raymond. Please, it's important." Marcus held out the phone to Raymond. "It's for you." Raymond stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. 4 years of silence. 4 years of questions. And now, at the worst possible moment, she was reaching out. "I can't," Raymond whispered. "You have to." Marcus pressed the phone into his hand. "Whatever she has to say, you need to hear it." Raymond raised the phone to his ear with trembling hands. "Denise?" Everyone in the room could hear her crying. "Raymond! Oh God, Raymond, I'm so sorry!" "Why are you calling now, after everything?" "Because I finally know the truth. I saw Hendricks on the news. I heard what he said about the conspiracy, about sabotage." Her voice broke. "All these years I thought... They told me." "What did they tell you?" "They told me you knew about the affair, that you were planning to use it to blackmail Hendricks, that the prototype failure was your revenge." Denise was sobbing now. "They showed me documents, emails that looked like they were from you. I believed them, Raymond. God help me, I believed them." Raymond's face had gone from white to gray. "You thought I sabotaged the project on purpose, to hurt Hendricks?" "Yes, and when the investigation started, when everything fell apart, I couldn't face you. I couldn't look at the man I thought you had become." A long, shuddering breath. "When your letter arrived, I didn't open it. I burned it, because I thought it was more lies." "You never read it?" "No, and I've spent 4 years hating myself for it." Denise's voice steadied slightly. "Raymond, I was manipulated. We both were. They used our marriage, our problems, our weaknesses against us, and I was too blind to see it." Raymond closed his eyes. Marcus watched his friend struggle with 4 years of pain, of unanswered questions, of wondering why the woman he loved had abandoned him. "Where are you now?" Raymond asked finally. "Seattle, but I'm coming to San Francisco tomorrow morning. I need to see you face to face. I need to..." She stopped. "I need to ask your forgiveness, if you can give it." "I forgave Hendricks tonight, the man who destroyed my career and slept with my wife." Raymond's voice was raw. "Do you really think I can't forgive you? I don't deserve it." Neither did he, but forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about letting go. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Then, I'll be there tomorrow. Whatever you need me to do, whatever truth I can provide, I'll give it. I owe you that much." "You don't owe me anything, Denise. But I'll see you tomorrow." He ended the call and handed the phone back to Marcus. His hands were shaking. "She was manipulated," Raymond said, his voice hollow. "All this time, I thought she left because she stopped loving me, but she left because they made her believe I was a monster." "They manipulated everyone." Jennifer looked up from her laptop. "It's a pattern. Isolate the target. Turn their allies against them. Destroy their support system before they can fight back." "Classic character assassination," Hendricks confirmed quietly. "Victoria Ashworth was particularly good at it. She had files on everyone, personal information, weaknesses, leverage. Including my marriage. Including your marriage." Marcus put a hand on Raymond's shoulder. "This changes things. If your ex-wife can testify that she was shown fabricated evidence, that's another nail in their coffin. She'll have to relive everything." Raymond shook his head. 4 years of believing I was a criminal. 4 years of guilt and shame, and now I'm asking her to expose all of it publicly. "You're not asking her to do anything. She volunteered." "Because she feels guilty. That's not the same as wanting to testify." Jennifer spoke up. "Mr. Carter, I know this is difficult, but your ex-wife's testimony could be crucial. It establishes a pattern of witness manipulation. It shows that the conspiracy extended beyond the professional sphere into personal lives." "I know what it shows." Raymond's voice was sharp. "I also know what it costs, and I'm not sure I want her to pay that price. That's her decision to make, not yours." The room fell silent. Raymond walked back to the window, his shoulders tight with tension. At 1:15 a.m., Jennifer's phone buzzed. "It's live," she announced. "The story is out." Marcus pulled up the Chronicle's website on his laptop. The headline filled the screen. "Exclusive Meridian aerospace disaster was deliberate sabotage, whistleblower confesses." "Shh!" Below it, Jennifer's byline and a photograph of Raymond Carter from his days at MIT before everything fell apart. "It's done," Jennifer said. "Now we wait." They didn't have to wait long. Within 30 minutes, the story had been picked up by every major news outlet. Within an hour, Senator Blackwood's office had issued a statement denying any involvement and threatening legal action against the Chronicle. Within 2 hours, Victoria Ashworth had been photographed leaving her home with packed suitcases heading for the airport. At 3:47 a.m., Marcus received a call from Victor Chen. "I've seen the story," Victor said. "It's remarkable." "Is that good remarkable or bad remarkable?" "It's the kind of remarkable that changes industries." Victor paused. "I've spoken with my fellow investors. Our commitment stands. In fact, several have expressed interest in increasing their investment given the vindication of Dr. Carter and the exposure of systematic corruption in the aerospace sector." Marcus exhaled with relief. "Thank you, Victor." "Don't thank me. Thank Dr. Carter. His patents and his integrity are the foundation of everything we're building." Another pause. "There's something else. I have contacts in the Department of Justice. They're already opening an investigation based on the Chronicle's reporting. Arrests could come within days. That fast. When a sitting senator is implicated in potential murder, the wheels turn quickly." After the call ended, Marcus found Raymond still standing at the window, watching the pre-dawn sky begin to lighten. "Victor says the DOJ is opening an investigation. There could be arrests soon." "Good. You don't sound happy." "I'm not happy, or sad, or angry." Raymond turned to face him. "I'm tired, Marcus. Bone tired. 4 years of running. 4 years of hiding. And now in the space of 2 days, everything has changed. Changed for the better. Has it? Tomorrow, the world will know my name again. They'll call me a victim, a hero, a vindicated genius, but I'll still be the same man I was yesterday, the same man who slept in a shelter and taught physics to homeless kids and couldn't afford a cup of coffee. You're more than that. Am I, or is that just what you want to believe?" Raymond smiled sadly. "Don't misunderstand me. I'm grateful for everything you've done, but I've learned something in the past 4 years. Something important." "What?" "That identity isn't something the world gives you. It's something you build for yourself day by day, choice by choice. The world called me a fraud, and I believed them for a while, but in the end, I knew who I was. I knew what I had done and what I hadn't done, and that knowledge kept me alive when everything else was taken away." Marcus considered this for a long moment. "What are you going to do now, after all this is over?" "I'm going to fix your thermal regulation system. I promised you I would, and I keep my promises." Raymond paused. "After that, I want to build something. Not just technology, something bigger. Something that helps people who fall through the cracks the way I did." "What kind of something?" "A center for overlooked talent, for engineers and scientists and inventors who lost everything through no fault of their own. A place where credentials matter less than capability, where someone can walk in off the street and prove what they know, regardless of what their resume says." Marcus felt something stir in his chest. "That's ambitious." "Everything worth doing is ambitious. You'd need funding, facilities, staff. I'd need a partner." Raymond met his gaze directly. "Someone who believes in second chances. Someone who knows what it's like to fight for everything they have." "Are you asking me?" "I'm suggesting that we build it together, your resources and connections, my experience and expertise. We could create something that matters, Marcus. Something that lasts longer than either of us." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed again. A text from Denise. "Airport security just detained a woman trying to board a private flight to Switzerland. Victoria Ashworth. They found documents in her luggage, encrypted files. They think it's evidence of additional crimes." He showed the text to Raymond. "It's starting to unravel," Raymond said. "The whole network, everything they built on lies and manipulation." "Do you feel vindicated?" "No, I feel tired, and ready for this part to be over so the real work can begin." At 7:22 a.m., as the sun rose over San Francisco, Marcus's front gate buzzed. Security announced that Denise Carter had arrived. Raymond went rigid. "She's early." "Do you want me to send her away?" "No." Raymond straightened his shoulders. "No, I've been hiding from this conversation for 4 years. It's time to have it." Marcus led him to the front door, then stepped back. "I'll give you privacy." "Stay, please." Raymond's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't think I can do this alone." Marcus nodded and stayed. The door opened, and there she was, Denise Carter, Older than the photographs Raymond had kept, with gray streaks in her hair and lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. But still beautiful. Still the woman Raymond had loved. For a long moment they just looked at each other. Two people who had once been everything to each other, separated by 4 years of lies and manipulation. Then Denise stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Raymond, and she was crying and he was crying, and Marcus had to look away because the intimacy of the moment was too raw, too real. "I'm sorry," Denise kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "I know." Raymond held her tightly. "I know." They stayed like that for a long time. When they finally separated, Denise wiped her eye and looked at Marcus. "You must be Mr. Webb. I've heard about what you did. Taking Raymond in, believing him when no one else would." "Raymond saved himself. I just gave him a platform." "Don't be modest." She turned back to Raymond. "He's a good man, I can tell." "He is." Raymond's voice was steady. "But we have work to do, all of us." They moved to the study where Jennifer and Hendricks were waiting. Denise's eyes went cold when she saw Hendricks. "I remember you," she said quietly. "Mrs. Carter, I'm—" "Don't. Whatever you're going to say, don't." Denise's voice was like ice. "I forgave my husband for things he never did because of your lies. I let manipulated documents destroy my marriage. I spent 4 years hating myself for walking away from the best man I've ever known. I deserve your anger. You deserve worse than my anger. But Raymond has chosen to forgive you, and I trust his judgment more than my own." She sat down across from him. "So tell me everything, every lie you told, every document you fabricated, every life you destroyed. I want to hear all of it." The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours. Hendricks confessed everything again, this time to the woman whose marriage he had helped destroy. Denise listened with a face of stone, asking occasional questions, taking notes in a small notebook she had brought with her. When it was over, she looked at Raymond. "I want to testify, publicly, about what they did to us." "Denise, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. They used our marriage as a weapon. They turned our love into a tool for their corruption. The only way to fight back is to shine a light on every corner of their conspiracy." She reached out and took his hand. "Let me do this. For you, for us, for everyone else they might try to destroy." Raymond looked at her hand in his. 4 years of silence. 4 years of wondering. And now against all odds she was here. Fighting beside him instead of against him. "Okay," he said quietly. "Together." At 11:34 a.m., the FBI arrived at Marcus's home with questions about Victoria Ashworth's arrest. They had found the encrypted files. Financial records linking Senator Blackwood to offshore accounts. Communications detailing the plan to sabotage the Meridian prototype. And most damning of all, a memo discussing how to handle the federal investigator who had refused to stop digging. The agents interviewed everyone. Hendricks gave his confession again, this time on the record. Denise provided her testimony about the fabricated documents that had been used to manipulate her. Jennifer handed over her recordings and notes. By 4:00 p.m., Senator Blackwood had been arrested at his home in Virginia. By 6:00 p.m., Richard Chen, the Meridian legal counsel, had turned himself in, offering to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. By 9:00 p.m., the story had gone global. Every news network in the world was covering the scandal. Raymond Carter's face was on every screen, no longer the disgraced engineer of 4 years ago, but the vindicated whistleblower whose warnings had been ignored at catastrophic cost. Marcus found Raymond sitting alone on the back patio watching the sunset over San Francisco. "You should be inside, celebrating." "I'm not in a celebrating mood." "Why not? You won. They're being arrested. The truth is out." "People died, Marcus. The federal investigator, maybe others we don't know about. And for what money? Stock options, production deadlines." Raymond shook his head. "This isn't a victory, it's an accounting." "It's justice." "Justice would be turning back time. Justice would be giving me back my mother, my marriage, my career. Justice would be those 3 technicians who almost died in the explosion never having to go through that trauma." Raymond's voice was heavy. "What we have isn't justice, it's just consequences, long overdue consequences." Marcus sat down beside him. "What happens now? Now we build. We take everything we've learned, all the pain and the failure and the loss, and we turn it into something meaningful." Raymond looked at him. "Are you still interested in that partnership?" "The Innovation Center. I want to call it the Carter Webb Center for Overlooked Brilliance." Raymond smiled slightly. "Too dramatic." "Maybe a little, but I like it. My mother would have liked it. She spent her whole life believing that education could set people free. I want to prove her right. I want to create a place where someone like me, someone who lost everything through no fault of their own, can walk in and be judged by what they know, not what they look like or where they sleep. How do we start? We start with the patents, the ones I developed while I was homeless. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I want to use that money to fund the center. Raymond paused. I know it sounds crazy, giving away a fortune to help people I've never met. It doesn't sound crazy. It sounds like you. Is that a compliment? The highest I know how to give. They sat in silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. Somewhere in the house, voices murmured, phones rang, and the machinery of justice and redemption continued to turn. Marcus? Yeah. Thank you. For what? For seeing me when no one else would. For listening when everyone else was telling you not to. For choosing truth over comfort even when it cost you. Raymond turned to face him. I spent 4 years being invisible. You made me visible again. You were never invisible, Raymond, just overlooked. There's a difference. Is there? Invisible means you don't exist. Overlooked means people choose not to see you. The first is a tragedy. The second is a crime. Marcus met his gaze. What happened to you wasn't a tragedy, it was a crime. And it's time the world understood that. Raymond nodded slowly. The world is starting to understand. I just hope it remembers. We'll make sure it remembers. That's what the center is for. That's what our partnership is for. That's what all of this has been for. The door opened behind them. Denise stepped out onto the patio. They want you inside, she said to Raymond. The investigators have more questions. More questions. Always more questions. That's what happens when you're at the center of the biggest corporate scandal in a decade. She smiled softly. But you're not facing them alone. Not anymore. Raymond stood and offered her his hand. She took it. Coming, he asked Marcus. Right behind you. The three of them walked back into the house together toward the questions and the cameras and the long road ahead. The scandal would unfold over months. Trials would be held. Sentences would be handed down. Lives would be rebuilt. But in that moment, walking side by side with the people who had chosen to believe in him, Raymond Carter felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. He felt whole. The night was just beginning, and there was still so much work to do. But for the first time since the world had turned against him, Raymond knew he wasn't facing it alone, and that made all the difference. 6 months had passed since the night the truth came out, and the world Raymond Carter had known continued to transform in ways he never could have predicted. The trials had dominated headlines for weeks. Senator Blackwood received 15 years for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and involuntary manslaughter in connection with the federal investigator's death. Victoria Ashworth got 12 years. Richard Chen, who had cooperated fully, received 5 years with possibility of parole. The others scattered across various sentences, their empires of lies crumbling under the weight of evidence they had thought was buried forever. James Hendricks received 8 years reduced from the maximum because of his confession and cooperation. On the day of his sentencing, he had asked to speak to Raymond one final time. I'm ready to pay for what I did, Hendricks had said, his voice steady despite the handcuffs on his wrists. But I need you to know something. That conversation at the pier when you said you forgave me, it saved my life. I was planning to end things that night. You gave me a reason to face what I'd done instead of running from it. Raymond had simply nodded. There was nothing left to say between them. Some wounds heal, others just stop bleeding. Now, on a crisp October morning, Raymond stood in front of a building that hadn't existed 6 months ago. The Carter Webb Center for Overlooked Brilliance occupied an entire city block in Oakland, just 3 miles from the neighborhood where Marcus had grown up hungry and hopeless. You ready for this? Marcus asked, standing beside him. No. Raymond smiled slightly. But I've learned that waiting until you're ready means never starting at all. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had drawn hundreds of people. Journalists, investors, politicians, celebrities. But Raymond's eyes found only the faces that mattered. Grace Williams from the West Side Shelter, wearing a dress she had bought specifically for this occasion. Giuseppe the tailor dabbing his eyes with a silk handkerchief. Jennifer Okafor, no longer just a reporter, but now the center's official biographer documenting everything for the book she was writing. And Denise, standing in the front row with tears streaming down her face, wearing the wedding ring she had put back on 3 months ago when she and Raymond had remarried in a small ceremony attended only by close friends. Quite a journey, Denise had said that morning, adjusting his tie in the hotel room. From sleeping under bridges to cutting ribbons at your own innovation center. Our center, Raymond had corrected her. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have. You're the strongest person I've ever known. She had kissed him softly. But I'm glad you didn't have to. Now standing before the crowd with scissors in hand, Raymond felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. The betrayal, the years of darkness, the morning on a San Francisco street when a stranger's broken car had changed everything. He looked at Marcus and nodded. Together they cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause, but Raymond barely heard it. His mind was already inside the building where the first class of participants would begin their journey tomorrow. 50 men and women selected from shelters, prisons, rehabilitation centers, and street corners across the country. Engineers, scientists, inventors, and dreamers whose potential had been buried under circumstances beyond their control. Dr. Carter, a journalist pushed forward. Can you tell us what you hope to accomplish with this center? Raymond stepped to the microphone that had been set up near the entrance. I hope to prove something I learned the hard way, he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. That genius doesn't care about your address, that brilliance doesn't check your credit score, that the next world-changing idea might come from someone society has decided to ignore. He paused, finding destiny in the crowd. The girl from the shelter who had asked him about quantum thermodynamics years ago. She was 18 now, holding an acceptance letter to MIT that Raymond had helped her earn. 4 years ago, I was invisible. I slept on concrete, I ate from soup kitchens, I wore the same clothes until they fell apart. And during all of that, I developed 7 patents that are now worth over $300 million. Raymond let the number sink in. Not despite being homeless, not after being homeless, while being homeless, because poverty doesn't destroy intelligence. It just hides it from people who refuse to look. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. This center exists to force the world to look, to create a space where a person can walk in off the street and prove what they know, where the only question that matters is what can you do, not where have you been. Raymond's voice grew stronger. We're going to find overlooked brilliance wherever it hides, and we're going to show the world what it's been missing. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Raymond was already moving toward the entrance. There was work to do. The first month of operations exceeded every expectation. Raymond had designed the program himself, drawing on his years of experience in both the heights of academia and the depths of homelessness. There were no applications, no resumes, no interviews about employment gaps or criminal records. Instead, candidates were given challenges, problems to solve, machines to fix, concepts to explain. The results were staggering. A 47-year-old woman named Patricia, who had been living in her car for 3 years after her accounting firm collapsed, turned out to be a mathematical genius capable of solving optimization problems that had stumped entire corporate research teams. A 23-year-old man named Jerome, recently released from prison where he had served time for drug possession, demonstrated an intuitive understanding of electrical engineering that left Marcus's own team speechless. A 59-year-old veteran named Samuel, who had lost his legs in Afghanistan, and his hope in the VA system designed a prosthetic limb in the center's workshop that was more advanced than anything currently on the market. Where did you learn this? Raymond asked Samuel during one of their sessions. I didn't learn it. I figured it out. Samuel shrugged. When you're lying in a hospital bed for 18 months with nothing to do but think you come up with ideas, most people just don't have anywhere to build them. Now you do. Now I do. Samuel smiled for the first time since Raymond had met him. And I'm going to make sure other veterans have somewhere too. The center's success attracted attention from everywhere. Tech companies from rivers sent recruiters. Universities offered partnerships. Investors who had initially been skeptical now competed for the chance to fund expansion, but it also attracted enemies. 3 months after the ribbon cutting, Raymond received a phone call that changed everything again. Dr. Carter. The voice was unfamiliar. Female, professional. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm the director of the National Engineering Board. Raymond's stomach tightened. The National Engineering Board was the organization that had revoked his professional credentials 4 years ago based on the false accusations from Meridian. I know who you are. I'm calling to inform you that the board has completed its review of your case. In light of recent revelations and the successful prosecution of those responsible for the Meridian disaster, we have unanimously voted to restore your professional engineering license with full privileges and no restrictions. Raymond said nothing. He couldn't. Additionally, Dr. Chen continued, the board wishes to formally apologize for the harm caused by our premature action 4 years ago. We failed to conduct adequate due diligence before revoking your credentials, and we failed you as an organization designed to protect and support engineers. Apology, Raymond's voice was flat. You think an apology covers 4 years of homelessness, 4 years of being told I wasn't qualified to do the work I'd spent my entire life mastering. No, I don't think an apology is sufficient. That's why I'm also calling to inform you that the board has established a new protocol inspired by your case to prevent similar injustices in the future. We're calling it the Carter Protocol. Dr. Chen paused. No engineer will ever again have their credentials revoked based on accusations alone. Full investigation, full due process, full transparency, because of what happened to you. Raymond closed his eyes. The anger he had carried for so long, the bitterness that had kept him warm on cold nights when he had nothing else, began to soften. The protocol is a good start, he said finally, but it's not enough. What would be enough? Funding for the center, for programs like ours across the country. The board has resources, political influence. If you really want to make amends, use them. A long pause. Then I'll bring it to the full board. You'll have our answer within a week. 6 days later, the National Engineering Board announced a 5-year, $50 million commitment to support innovation centers for overlooked talent nationwide. The first 3 would be built in partnership with the Carter Webb Center in Detroit, Atlanta, and Houston. Raymond learned of the announcement while sitting in his office reviewing applications for the center's second cohort. Marcus burst through the door with his phone in hand. Did you see this? They're funding everything. All 3 expansions. Full commitment. I saw. You don't seem excited. Raymond looked up from his paperwork. I'm grateful, but I've learned not to get too excited about promises from institutions. They have a way of forgetting. This is different. Is it 6 months ago these same people were happy to let me rot on the streets? Now they're writing checks and naming protocols after me. What changed? You changed. Marcus sat down across from him. You showed them what was possible. You built something they couldn't ignore. I built something because I had no other choice. Because the alternative was disappearing completely. Raymond set down his pen. Every person in this center has the same story. They didn't become geniuses because they were homeless or incarcerated or forgotten. They were always geniuses. The world just refused to see it. And now the world is seeing it. Part of the world, a small part. There are still millions of people out there whose potential will never be recognized, whose ideas will die with them because no one bothered to look. Raymond stood and walked to the window. The center is a start. The expansions are a start. But we're treating symptoms, Marcus, not the disease. What's the disease? A system that decides who matters based on where they sleep and what they wear and what their record says. A system that wastes human potential because it's easier than investing in it. Raymond turned to face his friend. We need to change the system, not just build sanctuaries for the people it fails. That's a big ambition. Everything worth doing is ambitious. You told me that once. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his expression shifted. It's Destiny. She says she needs to see you immediately. Says it's urgent. Shoot. They found Destiny in the center's main workshop surrounded by equipment and papers, her eyes red from crying, but her jaw set with determination. What's wrong? Raymond asked. Nothing's wrong. Something's right. Destiny thrust a tablet into his hands. Look at this. Raymond studied the screen. It was a schematic complex and detailed, showing a system he didn't immediately recognize. What am I looking at? A water purification system, portable, solar-powered, capable of producing clean drinking water from almost any source. Destiny's voice was shaking with excitement. I designed it, based on the principles you taught me years ago, before MIT, before any of this. Raymond examined the schematic more closely. The design was elegant, efficient, revolutionary. It solved problems that had plagued engineers for decades. Destiny, this is extraordinary. I know, that's not why I'm crying. She wiped her eyes. I showed it to my professor at MIT. He said it was impossible, that a freshman couldn't have designed something this advanced. He accused me of plagiarism. Marcus stepped forward. He said there was no way someone from my background could have come up with this on my own. He reported me to the Academic Integrity Board. Destiny's voice cracked. They're threatening to expel me. Raymond, I'm going to lose everything. The air in the workshop seemed to freeze. Raymond felt something cold and familiar settling into his bones. The same pattern, the same dismissal, the same refusal to see brilliance that didn't match expectations. No? His voice was quiet but absolute. You're not going to lose anything. But they don't believe me. Then we make them believe you. Raymond handed the tablet to Marcus. Call Dr. Patricia Okonkwo at Space Tech. Tell her I need her at MIT tomorrow morning. Then call Jennifer Okafor. Tell her she has another story. Raymond, what are you planning? I'm planning to do for Destiny what no one did for me. I'm going to fight. He put his hands on Destiny's shoulders. You designed this system. You, with your mind, your creativity, your brilliance. And tomorrow we're going to prove it to everyone who refused to see it. The confrontation at MIT took place in a conference room filled with administrators, professors, and lawyers. On one side sat Destiny Raymond Marcus and Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. On the other sat Professor William Hartford, the man who had filed the plagiarism accusation along with the Dean of Engineering and the university's legal counsel. Jennifer Okafor sat in the corner recording everything. Let me be clear about why we're here. Raymond began, his voice cutting through the tension. Destiny Williams is being accused of plagiarism because her professor couldn't believe someone with her background could design something revolutionary. That's not academic integrity. That's bias. Professor Hartford's face reddened. I have 30 years of experience in this field. The design she submitted is too advanced for a first-year student. The mathematics alone would take years to master. And yet she mastered them. Raymond pulled out a stack of papers. These are Destiny's notebooks from the past 4 years. Every calculation, every iteration, every dead end she explored before finding the solution. I watched her develop this design. Professor, I saw her struggle with the same problems that have stumped your colleagues for decades, and I watched her solve them. You're biased. You're her mentor. Then perhaps you'll listen to someone with no personal connection. Raymond gestured to Dr. Okonkwo. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, Chief Engineer at Space Tech Industries. She's reviewed the design and Destiny's documentation. Dr. Okonkwo stood. I've spent 40 years in aerospace engineering. I've seen thousands of designs from some of the brightest minds in the world. Destiny Williams' water purification system is one of the most innovative pieces of engineering I've encountered in the past decade. That doesn't prove she designed it herself, Professor Hartford insisted. No, but this does. Dr. Okonkwo pulled out her own tablet. Last night at my request, Destiny completed a design challenge, a completely new problem, one she had never seen before. She was given 2 hours to develop a solution under observation with no access to outside resources. She turned the tablet to face the room. Her solution not only worked, it improved upon existing approaches by 17%. This young woman is a genuine engineering prodigy. Your failure to recognize that says more about your limitations than hers. The Dean of Engineering studied the tablet for a long moment. Then he turned to Professor Hartford. William, I think we need to have a conversation about unconscious bias in academic assessment. This is ridiculous. I've been teaching engineering for 3 decades. And in those 3 decades, how many students from backgrounds like Destiny's have you mentored to success? Raymond's voice was sharp. How many have you dismissed before they had a chance to prove themselves? Professor Hartford opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. He had no answer. The dean stood. The plagiarism accusation is withdrawn. Destiny Williams will continue her studies without any mark on her record. Additionally, I'm directing the engineering department to conduct a comprehensive review of our assessment practices to ensure that all students are evaluated fairly regardless of background. He looked at Destiny, who was crying silently with relief. Ms. Williams, on behalf of MIT, I apologize. You deserved better from us. Thank you, Destiny managed. But I didn't come here for an apology. What did you come here for? Destiny wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. I came here to prove that I belong, and I did. Now I'm going to get back to work. She stood and walked out of the conference room, head held high. Raymond watched her go, feeling something warm spread through his chest. She reminds me of someone, Marcus murmured beside him. She's better than I ever was. Raymond smiled, and that's exactly how it should be. The story of Destiny's vindication spread quickly, amplified by Jennifer Okafor's reporting and the social media accounts of students who had witnessed the confrontation. Within weeks, universities across the country were reviewing their own policies, examining how unconscious bias might be affecting their assessments of students from non-traditional backgrounds. But the true impact came 6 months later, when Destiny's water purification system was deployed for the first time in a village in Kenya that had never had reliable access to clean drinking water. Raymond and Destiny traveled together to witness the installation. They stood side by side as the first clean water flowed from the system, as children who had never known anything but contaminated water drank deeply and laughed with pure joy. You did this, Raymond said quietly. We did this. Destiny was crying again, but these were different tears. You believed in me when no one else would. You taught me that my ideas mattered. You showed me that where I came from didn't determine where I could go. I just saw what was already there. You did the rest. They watched as villagers gathered around the purification unit, marveling at the technology that would transform their lives. An elderly woman approached them speaking in Swahili that their translator quickly converted. She wants to know who made this miracle, the translator said. Destiny looked at Raymond, who nodded encouragement. Tell her a girl from a homeless shelter in San Francisco made it, Destiny said. Tell her that a man who slept on the streets taught her how, and tell her that this is just the beginning. The news from Kenya attracted international attention. Governments, NGOs, and corporations reached out wanting to deploy Destiny's system in communities across the world. The patent, which Destiny had insisted on sharing with the Carter Webb Center, became one of the most valuable pieces of intellectual property in the clean water sector. But Raymond barely noticed any of it. His mind was already on the next challenge. 1 year after the ribbon cutting, he stood once again in front of the Carter Webb Center, this time for a different kind of ceremony. The first cohort of participants was graduating, and each of them had a story that defied every assumption society made about who could succeed. Patricia, the woman who had lived in her car, was now the lead optimization specialist at a Fortune 500 company. Jerome, the young man recently released from prison, had founded a startup developing affordable electrical systems for underserved communities. Samuel, the veteran with no legs, had licensed his prosthetic design to 3 major manufacturers and was using the proceeds to build a rehabilitation center for wounded warriors. And there were 47 others, each with their own journey from invisibility to impact. Raymond addressed them for the final time as their mentor. 1 year ago, you walked into this center with nothing but your minds and your determination. The world had told you that you were failures, that your circumstances defined your worth, that you had nothing to offer. He paused, looking at each face in turn. The world was wrong. You proved that genius doesn't care about your address, that brilliance doesn't check your bank account, that the barriers society builds are made of assumptions, not facts. His voice grew stronger. You proved that overlooked doesn't mean incapable, that forgotten doesn't mean worthless, that invisible doesn't mean absent. Raymond stepped away from the podium and walked among the graduates. But your work isn't finished. It's just beginning. Because for every one of you who made it through our doors, there are thousands more who never got the chance. Millions more whose potential will be wasted because no one bothered to look. He stopped in front of Destiny, who had returned from Kenya to speak at the ceremony. Your job now is to be the person who looks, to find the overlooked brilliance hiding in shelters and prisons and street corners and everywhere else society has decided to forget. To give others the chance you were given. Says. He turned back to face the full group. You are not success stories. You are proof of a fundamental truth that human potential is the most valuable resource on Earth, and we waste more of it than we can ever calculate. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Don't let them waste any more. Not on your watch. The applause that followed was different from the ribbon cutting a year earlier. Deeper, more personal, the sound of people who understood exactly what Raymond meant because they had lived it. After the ceremony, Raymond found Marcus standing alone near the building's entrance, watching the graduates celebrate with their families. You did it, Marcus said. Everything you said you would do. We did it. I couldn't have done any of this alone. Yes, you could have. That's what makes you remarkable. You were already doing it before I showed up. Teaching kids at the shelter, developing patents on newspaper margins, refusing to let homelessness destroy what made you who you are. Raymond shook his head. That wasn't strength. That was survival. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, they look pretty similar. A familiar figure approached them. Denise carrying 2 glasses of champagne. Am I interrupting? Never. Raymond took the glass she offered. We were just discussing the difference between strength and survival. There is no difference. Denise wrapped her arm around his waist. Survival is strength. The choice to keep going when everything tells you to stop. The decision to maintain your dignity when the world is trying to strip it away. That's the hardest kind of strength there is. Marcus raised his glass. To survival, then, and to everything that comes after. They drank together as the sun set over Oakland, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. I want to ask you something, Marcus said after a moment. Something I've been wondering since that first day. Ask? When you approached my car, when you offered to help, what made you think I would listen? I was ready to have you arrested. I had already dismissed you. What made you believe you could get through to me?" Raymond considered the question for a long time before answering. "I didn't believe I could get through to you. I believed I had to try." He looked at Marcus directly. "When I was at my lowest, when I had lost everything and everyone, the only thing that kept me going was the knowledge that my skills still mattered, that I could still solve problems, still help people, still make a difference. Your car was a problem I could solve, so I tried. Not because I thought you would listen, because not trying would have meant giving up on who I was. And if I hadn't listened, if I had let Hendricks take you away, then I would have found another way, another problem to solve, another person to help. The world is full of broken things that need fixing. I just had to keep looking until I found one that someone would let me touch." Denise squeezed his hand. "That's the most you've ever said about those years." "It's the most I've ever understood about them." Raymond smiled softly. "For a long time, I thought being homeless was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now I think it might have been the most important. It showed me who I really was underneath all the degrees and titles and credentials. It showed me that my worth wasn't something the world gave me. It was something I carried inside, something no one could take away, no matter how hard they tried." The celebration continued around them, laughter and music filling the evening air. But Raymond's mind was already moving forward to the next centers that would open the next overlooked geniuses who would be found, the next assumptions that would be shattered. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked. "The future. Our next 10 centers? The 100 after that? The thousands of people we haven't reached yet. You never stop, do you?" "I can't afford to stop. None of us can." Raymond turned to face his friend and his wife. "The world wastes human potential like it's infinite, but it's not. Every person we miss, every genius we overlook, every dreamer we dismiss, that's potential, that's gone forever, and we've already lost too much." He looked out at the graduates, at the families, at the building that represented everything he had fought to create. "I spent 4 years being invisible. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure no one else has to." Marcus put his hand on Raymond's shoulder. "You won't be doing it alone." "No," Raymond smiled, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, it reached his eyes. "I won't." The evening deepened around them, stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the city, a person was sleeping on a sidewalk, their mind full of ideas that no one would ever hear. Somewhere else, a woman was staring at a design that could change the world, wondering if anyone would ever take her seriously. Somewhere, a child was asking questions that adults couldn't answer, not knowing yet that curiosity was a gift that the world would try to crush. Raymond couldn't save all of them, he knew that, but he could build a system that would find some of them. A network that would spread center by center, city by city, until overlooked brilliance became impossible to ignore. The Carter Webb Center was just the beginning. The real work, the work of changing not just individual lives, but the assumptions that shaped society itself, was still ahead. But standing there in the fading light, surrounded by people who had once been invisible and were now changing the world, Raymond Carter knew one thing with absolute certainty: it was possible. Not easy, not quick, not guaranteed, but possible. And possible was all he had ever needed. He finished his champagne and set down the glass. "Come on," he said to Marcus and Denise. "We have work to do." They walked together into the building toward the future they were building, one overlooked genius at a time. In the story of Raymond Carter, there are many lessons. About perseverance in the face of impossible odds. About the difference between what the world sees and what truly exists. About the power of one person to change everything simply by refusing to disappear. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: every person you pass on the street, every face you overlook, every life you dismiss, carries potential that you cannot imagine. The homeless man might be a genius. The prisoner might be an inventor. The forgotten might be the ones who could save us all. Raymond Carter fixed a car with pencil graphite and changed an industry. He slept on concrete and developed patents worth hundreds of millions. He lost everything and built something that would outlast him. Not because he was special, but because he refused to let anyone tell him he wasn't. That is the truth he proved. That is the legacy he left. That is the story that began on a San Francisco street corner when a homeless man approached a broken car and said 3 words that changed everything. "I can fix it." And he did.